Hello and welcome to another video. In this video we're going to cover a tier list and kind of what classes for me if you're a new player or returning. To start off the video, we're going to go ahead and cover some ground rules. I'm going to show you a tier list that I think, from my personal opinion, when it comes to experienced players. I'm not going to spend too much time on this just because obviously it's a personal opinion and there's going to be a lot of disagreements with some of these, but for the most part, if there's an experienced player on each individual class here, there is some sort of advantage that somebody has over the other. I would say like Vengeance is maybe like the only exception, but Vengeance does have the best AoE in the game, so it's debatable. IO can get trained quite a bit. Those are really the main two that I am debating on, but other than that, I would say that these are pretty solid, and I would rate them this way. So if you are interested in more experienced gameplay, it's like top tier, this is what I would consider to be the best specs in the game. For 8v8, I'm only talking for 8v8 by the way. I'm not going to bother with 4v4 in this video at all, otherwise it would just take too long. So with that out of the way, I'm sure some people just wanted to see that, that's totally fine. We're going to go to the main tier list for this video. This is ease of playability and also what's meta at the moment for 8v8. So you're looking at Madness as pretty much the king, and it's mostly just because it's very, very easy to play. It's very easy to get something out of the class, and it's just because it's easy to play doesn't necessarily mean that it deserves the rating that it's at, but it's more so its ability to face tank without much thought that it gets this rank. Obviously it's very good. It's top rated in my other tier list anyway, or at least I believe I put it up there. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, so it's like the fourth one. It's really good, and it's just got a lot of stuff that other classes just don't. So for example, it has a damage reduction that it can just activate by existing. It's a very good spec. It has a dueling spec that I could play, and it also has a it's kind of like AoE build that I can play. Obviously, probably the easiest class to play. Then you have something like Lethality, Virulence. These are a little bit harder, but for the most part, they are just so good that once you've spent that little time to learn how to play it, it's 100% worth it. You have something like Lightning. Lightning is relatively straightforward to learn. You have an AoE and single target variant that you can play, and once you've understood the basics of the AoE variant, you're very easily able to team wipe, and it doesn't take too much thought process to actually obtain that ability to do that much damage. It's one of the classes that's very, very easy to do damage on, just like Lethality, Madness, and Virulence. And I rank it so high because its impact is pretty much unmatched for how easy it is. And then you have Pyrotech, the tankiest melee that you could possibly play next to Lethality. And then you also have Rage. Pyro is a little bit more complicated with its rotation, but for the most part, most of its damage is currently coming from dots, so really just gotta go around scorching everybody. And then you have Rage, and then Advanced Prototype. Rage just has really good burst. It's like third best burst, next to Engineering and AP. AP has the best burst, and it's relatively simple and straightforward. You kind of get the ideal. And I'm going to go through the rest of the specs because they all have their kind of niche, and they're also just not as good as the top specs here. However, don't be discouraged. All these classes are very playable, and I would say the classes that are least playable would be Marksmanship and Concealment overall, but for the most part, there are plenty of classes that play quite a bit alike. So if you are interested in a certain playstyle, chances are there probably is something for you. So what I want to do is start with the first class here. We're going to go to Madness. So we're going to go ahead and pause, and you'll see me on Madness in just a second. Alright, and I am back. We are now on Madness, and one thing I forgot to mention is that we're kind of going to go over a little bit about each individual class. So for example, our stim is expired, so I'm going to go ahead and refresh that so you can see my accurate stats. So normally I would drop some critical on Madness. Madness crit DR is around 4.3 thousand. You can go a little bit more. Typically, you don't really want to pass 5,000. But for the most part, I think there's like only really one class that wants 5,000. That's Carnage, like 5100. Even I don't do that because Shard of Mortis completely breaks the game and you don't really even need critical. But that's not for conversation here. Kind of going over madness here. So optional if you don't want to like constantly swap up your gear and you play a lot of different specs. 4800 is a good way to just go and set it and forget it. However, if you do want to min-max a little bit more, you can definitely drop some critical for some mastery. And then we have our basic 1.3 GCD, and we're not really worrying about anything else. These are the tacticals that I run. I pretty much never use Mystic Ruthless Blade. I have it because there were some times that it was kind of fun to play with, but for the most part, I don't really play the single target build enough to get value out of this tactical. However, it is a very fun build. And then you also have Killing Field. I virtually never use this, and it's mostly just because I feel like Tempest of Row is just better with the AoE Lightning Strike. I just like that more. I know that for lesser experienced Madness players, they don't even use their Lightning Strike. So Overload Strike is a convoluted thing for them. So if you're looking at for ease of gameplay, either of these two tacticals are pretty easy to make use of. But also at the same time, so is this ability. So basically what happens is when you're playing Madness, you use your channel Force Lightning. Once you get 4 stacks, you get Instant Cast for Demolish, or Overload Strike, or it would be Lightning Strike if you're running that. So basically what happens here is I can use that ability, that's Instant Cast. Because combat was dropping, I was a little buggy there, but for the most part, that's kind of just how that goes. And if I have Creeping Terror on the target, my Force Lightning has a chance to tick. And then also this has a guaranteed chance to tick. So that's the main reason I use that. That dot is internal damage, so you get extra value. And then if there's ever any AoE, the value just becomes more and more and more. Obviously things like Killing Field have a lot of value because your Demolish can spread retroactively. And what I mean by that is that you could already have Death Mark on the enemy. So for example, let's say we drop a Death Mark on there. Everybody that got hit by that will now have this on them. And if you were ever to spread a Demolish to anybody that had a Death Field on them, it would also spread to everyone around them that also had that Death Mark. So it doesn't mean that you need to go Death Mark into Demolish, but rather whenever your Death Mark is still present on players, it will spread. I know that tactical is a little confusing, but that's how that works, and it's actually pretty good. And then obviously we have the Mystic Ruthless Blade. I'm just going to kind of ignore this one just because it is a little bit more complicated, but also at the same time, there are situations where it's pretty good. So these are the talents that I pretty much always run. This one is pretty much mandatory. I don't really recommend ever speccing off of this one, especially as a new player. This is where you're going to get most of your damage reduction, and this is where your defensive power is going to shine. If you don't know how to play the game, this is what's going to save you. And then for this one's just increased damage for single target. However, you can run Eternal Torment, and the main reason you would even want to run this is for the AoE procs. And when you have the AoE procs going off, it can reveal stealthed players. Not that this is necessarily useful for a new player. It is nice to have in certain war zones where players are trying to constantly take the node, and if you care a little bit more about objectives, it's arguably worthwhile to take this talent so you can randomly pop stealth out. There's definitely very much so a good use for this. Then this one we pretty much just never use, so it's really just between those two. And then whenever you're not taking Overload Strike, if you want more mobility and you're just not very confident in your ability to play, I highly recommend Critical Movement because it'll allow you to use your force speed more often and get your polarity back more often, which also gives you more movement speed. And obviously, polarity doesn't normally give you more movement speed, it's the surging speed that actually gives you that, and also increases the duration of your force speed by a little bit, and also resets your force speed once you use Force Barrier. And then our implants are all centered around force speed, so it can be a big DPS increase. And then you also have Shock Bomb. Basically that just explodes all of your dots and gives you some burst. So if I was to have all 3 dots on my target, use shock, it would basically explode them all and it give me some burst, and then I have to reapply my dots. It can become very resource hungry very fast, and your dark heal is already very expensive to use. You can find yourself low on force a lot. So I wouldn't necessarily always recommend that, but it is a option. If you're struggling with like dueling people, or there's people that are just like chasing you and you're not very good at kiting yet, probably one of the most annoying things you could possibly do is run Death Brand. Death Brand will apply a slow on the target, even though it doesn't say that. And it also has a chance to tick again after it's already fallen off. So what we'll do here is I'll put a dot on the target. I'm going to Death Brand them. You can watch this. As this falls off, there's a chance that it'll come back. And unfortunately, we were unlucky and it did not come back. But the general ideal is that you'll have this on the target and it'll slow them for the duration. So it'll be much harder for them to gap close. And whenever it reapplies, which we've been unlucky twice in a row now, it makes it a lot easier for you to get away from that person. You don't have to force slow anymore, so Death Brand's a way to get an on-demand slow on somebody. And it really helps in your 1v1. Obviously you can still tab dot, but for the most part, I don't really recommend it all the time. It is something that you can use, and I consider it kind of a crutch because you don't actually learn how to play Madness, more so the intended way that was meant to be played, which is dot spreading. But obviously tab dotting is just as effective, and that's what people did for a very long time. So I'll put Death Field back here. So it's really up to you. If you're not confident in your ability, Death Brand and critical movement, and whatever you decide here. Into that, surging speed, phase walk, and immersion. You pretty much always want immersion. The ability to get out of movement and pairing effects is very important. So this means like roots and slows. Then outside of that, obviously when you force speed, you get an amplified ability. So if you jump Death Field, it'll do a little bit more damage. So we're running the tactical 20% more force damage after using force speed, and 20% more damage while polarity shift is active. And then your other one basically reduces the cooldown of polarity shift and extends duration polarity shift. Very much so a good tactical combo to run. Arguably the best, really, in the entire game. So to give you like a kind of an ideal of how you want to start most matches, you want to find a position for your phase walk. So let's say we know it would take a long time for them to, let's just say around the corner, to get to me here. Let's say I could get over here. Put my phase walk over here. Let's talk like this is like ancient hypergate. We're going in here and we're getting ready to fight. If any situation is like where I'm here alone, there's like 5 melee that just jump to me, I would just immediately phase walk. I would not even bother. I'd wait until my team goes in. Now all those players have wasted their 5 leaps, and your team can kind of deal with that. And then you'll come in behind them, and they hopefully won't focus you. But chances are, anybody smart will know that you just burn your phase walk, and they should try to hit you, but they have to go through your team. But typically, phase walk is a very easy get out gel for free kind of card, and you want to use it before you take damage. Not necessarily do you always want to save it. You can save it, but it's not necessarily the best move because you can get netted and that will force your breaker. And also in AV, you kind of get away with a lot of terrain that you can kind of abuse that players won't be able to get close to. So normally you'll be looking at applying the internal dot, which will be creeping tear into affliction, and then when you're using a force lightning, you get your stacks for your demolish and your overload strike. So normally you'll go running around applying your dots to everybody, tab, putting some more dots on, so on and so forth. But let's just say there's not really a situation to do that, or there's a lot of people cleave. It's just like, oh, let's just assume there's like 5 players around this person. Normally you will just open with creeping tear, and then what do you call it, affliction, and then you'll force speed for the increased damage, go into your other dot, and then you can use Leeching Strike just because you have all 3 dots on the target, and then you go to this. It's very straightforward. Trying to remember the names, but it's been a while. And then obviously on this one, you'll reapply your dots. Do it all over again. Bam, bam, bam. It's relatively straightforward. The general ideal is that Creeping Terror and Affliction, which are these 2 abilities right here, will be spread by Death Field, and then Demolish is your main heavy hitter dot. Then you have Leeching, or not Leeching Strike, but Force Leech that will do damage depending on how many dots you have on target, and then Overload Strike, which is Lightning Strike, is your filler damage that you only use after you use Force Lightning. That's pretty much it. That is a sorcerer in a nutshell, and your most overpowered ability is this one right here. Use it on cooldown. It is a 5-second root, and for the most part, there's a lot of classes that can get out of it, but for when it's used a lot, they will eventually just not have anything to get out of it. So that is Madness Sorcerer. Highly recommend it. If you like range classes, you like dot classes, this is the go-to. Now we're going to go to the second class, and I will catch you guys in just a second. Alright, and we're back. So this time we are covering Lethality Operative. This is a melee class that is focused on dots. So for example, we've got our 3 dots here. This is typically where I usually keep my dots. There are 3 of them. One of them is white damage. And let's go into our stats. We're pretty much running the normal stats that we run on most classes. However, you can go 5% accuracy. It's not a terrible ideal to do because you're using a lot of corrosive assault, which is your main single target damage. Also, basically reproc your dots, so it gets you a little extra damage, and then Toxic Blast is also bite damage, and when you spread it, I believe it doesn't actually run on a accuracy roll, so in reality sometimes you could probably just get away with running no accuracy like I am, and doing something like this. So we throw our dots, these are Toxic Blast, and then spread. Normally, I'm pretty sure there's no accuracy roll for the Toxic Haze to spread your dots with this is Viral Elements Tactical. However, what you would want to do if they have defense chance, or if they have a chance to dodge it in general, or have Saberboard, stun them before you use Toxic Blast, basically. And when they're stunned, they have 0 defense chance. So you kind of get around the need for accuracy, which is pretty important. Anyway, getting that out of the way, that's really one of the most important things to know about this class. So accuracy is sometimes just not worth it, and I don't use it. There are times where I will rather go the extended evasion because I need it. 7 seconds evasion is very good, especially when you're playing against large premates. The stun won't really get its value because you'll get stunned all the time, so you won't really be able to make basically use of that 4 seconds, and you'll find more use in this. However, new players probably won't do too well in general against that, but if you ever find yourself just not using your stun as much, or you have a hard time staying on target, or you find yourself getting CC'd a lot and you just don't find the value in Debilitate, it's always good to take this one right here, which increases your duration of your evasion by 2 seconds. That brings it up to a grand total of 7 seconds of evasion. That's very good. So what we're looking at here is outside of our gear, we have typical stuff. We're running 10% crit chance, and then the 5% increased damage. Normally we'll be running, instead of the crit chance, stimulated. This will bring our mastery up quite a bit. Obviously I'm not wearing the AUG. If I was, it would be 18.444. However, I don't want to pay that money right now. This is just kind of like what we're running right now. And then you can also run Toxic Haze, heals any ally standing in it. So basically what this probe does, Toxic Haze heal is equivalent to this probe. 3200 is probably the lowest roll. We got 3400. Another 30. Yeah, we're getting some really bad rolls right now. Normally it does about 5,000 to 10,000. That's kind of the rolls that you're looking at. The Toxic Haze heal will go anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000. That's like the average heal tick. I don't know why it's healing for so low right now, but that is a thing, apparently. Whenever you're recording, it's just like, no. Very strange. Alright, anyway, let's get 2 stacks just to have that for a sense. There you go. Now we get 10,000. But sorry, excuse me. What we can do is just do this since we just have it. Just go ahead and do it. Bam. So you kind of get the idea. Anybody that's in this, that 10,000 is the haze heal. So you kind of get the ideal. You get about 3 ticks of it, and it's per person. So if there's a lot of people in there, you can kind of get a lot of value out of it. And on top of that, whenever you're like doing area denial, let's say you just rolled behind the door and you're healing yourself, you're probing yourself, you throw your toxic haze down, somebody walks into it, you then use your viral elements spread. Obviously, you're not spreading your dots with the toxic haze, but you're able to use your lethal strikes. So if you already have your dots on the target, it's not really a matter. It's just like a little extra thing that you can do to do a little bit more damage, but also at the same time do a little bit more healing. It's another thing to think about when you're playing this class, but for the most part, it's really just whatever implants you decide to be the best. I would recommend these two as they will increase your damage the most. And I know I haven't gone over relics this whole time. So normally we're always running the mastery and power. There's pretty much no point in running anything else for PvP. And then, unless you're playing high alacrity Carnage, but we'll get there when we get to Carnage, okay? Just wait. Alright, so now that we have our stats done, we're going to check our talents real quick. I do have a lot of guides on this class. I have like 2 or 3 or something like that. So feel free to check those if you really want like more in-depth information, because there's a lot of stuff that actually happens with this class and that you can do. Running with a basic corrosive return, so basically this just gives you a refund on your corrosive assault. I recommend it because when it comes to GCDs and brief engagements, you will be a little bit starved if you end up wasting your shiv, or just not having your shiv on the right cooldown for your tactical advantage management. And then you have your hard stun, which you can go with slide countermeasures. It's also very good. And then we just have the critical hit chance increase. That's just what we take. However, you can take the damage reduction. The only problem with the damage reduction one is that you have to spam this quite a bit to actually get the full effect of this, and you're already relatively tanky, so unless you're spamming this ability a lot and you just need a lot of damage reduction, I don't recommend going it, just because you should be a little bit more focused on doing damage and healing rather than trying to spam an ability that doesn't really do that much effective damage. And then we take the reset because it resets your stim boost, so that basically resets your durability, your main defensive. And then also at the same time it resets your shield probe, which is your second best defensive. And then toxic haze is just a nice reset in general. And then you also get your lethal strike reset. And then I take personally the 5% damage reduction. It just really complements your kit as a whole. However, you can take the cloaking screen, or I guess advanced cloaking. I virtually never take either of these just because the 5% damage reduction complements the brawler playstyle a little bit more. And then I also take the 5% health heal on Azorb, because any extra healing is very valuable. However, in situations where you actually need to get out of stealth and you need to get out of dodge, like you really need to escape, you should always take evasive screen. I just don't do that because I am greedy as all it can be, and I just don't do it. And then Hollow Traverse is really good, but you can also take Flashbang or the AoE group stealth. Typically this is more of an arena thing, so usually most of the time you'll take a Hollow Traverse. And then you want CDR evasion. The main reason you want that is so you can use your evasion more often. On lethality, it's a longer evasion, so you actually get a lot of use out of your evasion. And it's the second best way for you to purge your roots and your slows. Obviously, when it comes to roots and slows, like let's say a sniper knocks you back, you can use your cleanse, you can get rid of that. But if you're like bound with a force bind, for example, overload binds, you have Hollow Traverse that can get you out of that. Otherwise, you kind of have evasion. Evasion will get you out of that. But for the most part, you kind of want to just hold on to your evasion and not just use it just because. And then your other option would be blow for blow. Basically, this reflects 150% of the damage back to the user. You still take damage. However, it allows you to do a little bit extra damage for taking the damage that you would be taking anyway. with most of that explained, this class has a unique buff. So not only do you have heals, you can pop 2 probes, and you can maintain those basically every 15 seconds. So basically every lethal strike, roughly, is a good time to refresh your probes. And when you pop lethal strike, you get a 30% crit hit damage and chance of your probes and your dots. So they'll do a little bit more damage during the buff that happens after lethal strike. It'll amplify your damage and your healing, and it's very important to always do that on cooldown if you can. And Toxic Haze is another way to build a lot of damage. So for example, if I have this down, if people are in it, it just does a lot of damage over time, and it's an area denial ability, so it's very good. It's also good for your dot spreads, so do keep that in mind. Other than that, it's a very basic kind of like healing class. Since I don't have my keybind set right now, I'll have to hit this, but whenever you roll, you get a free Culto Infusion. Obviously there is an internal cooldown on that, but typically that's kind of like just how that works. Your stim boost is your first go-to defensive, and then absorb, which is shield probe, and then evasion is kind of the last ability that you have. And then you can use tactical overdrive to reset your stim boost and your shield probe. It's just kind of how lethality works in a nutshell. However, if you're looking for more detailed defensive management, I would recommend checking out my defensive management guide, because I do have a video dedicated to the entire thing. And to keep this video from going on forever, I'm going to go ahead and skip that. So I'll just give you an example of kind of like how the class plays. So I'll make it all 3 dots, get your haze down, use your lethal strike, use corrosive assault. I'm gonna go ahead and shiv, get another corrosive assault again. You kind of just do that over and over and over. Obviously that's not completely how you should always do it. You should be using your shiv on cooldown, trying to maintain at least 2 stacks of tactical advantage, and for the most part, getting your dots on multiple targets is going to be a little bit more important than spamming corrosive assault. Corrosive assault is going to be decent damage, but you want to have all 3 dots on the target if you're ever going to use corrosive assault. As you see, you can see the weapon damage. You just want to make sure that you have all 3 dots if you're going to bother using that ability. Otherwise, tab dot people, it's going to be a little bit more important. But for the most part, those 3 dots, Toxic Haze, and Lethal Strike. That's your main combo. That's really all you need to know. Outside of that, you can probe, you can cleanse, you can heal. It's your main focus. That's pretty much Lethality Operative. It is a interesting class. I have a lot of videos on this class, a lot of ranked videos on this class. Just in general, a solid class. It's one of my favorites, and I've played it for a long time. Other than that, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave questions in the comments. I know that I didn't mention this in the Madness one. If you do have any questions for these classes, feel free to leave them in the comments. And I'll be going to the next class now. Oh, and wait a minute. We have Snog Shots. That's another tactical that I completely forgot about. So to give you a quick rundown of basically how that works is that increases your toxic blast damage. So when we have these 2 dots, and we throw on this dot, and we start using Corrosive Assault, your toxic blast is going to be doing a lot more damage during this window. So basically that's all that really does. Just amplifies your single target damage a little bit more. That's your single target damage tactical to run, but most of the time you're not going to bother running that. You're going to be using Viral Elements because it's so strong. And other than that, I will catch you guys with the next class. Alright, and we're back with Virulence. Unfortunately, and fortunately enough, I do not have my sniper already at max level, so I can't explain everything I want to explain. However, my gunslinger is available, and we'll go over it on the Republic side. So if you have any questions specifically for Imperial version of this, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will get to you. Other than that, this is the stat pool that I pretty much run. I'm going 5% accuracy, not giving up my mastery stim, because we are running stimulated, so we're getting quite a bit of mastery here. I recommend this over anything. Obviously you can drop your accuracy if you really feel like it. I just run it because I want that hemorrhaging blast reset, or I guess toxic blast reset. And we're running the tactical that makes our dots explode. So I'll go ahead and show that to you real quick so you guys kind of have an idea of what I mean by that. So we drop a dot there, drop another dot, and then pop it. And when we pop it, there's a whole bunch of burst damage from those two dots. So that's what this tactical does, and it is a white damage dot explosion. So you kind of need some accuracy to consistently hit it, and without any accuracy, you risk missing it quite often. And there is a chance to kill people with that. And if you kill people with that, it will reset. So you'll be able to chain it back to back to back. Sometimes in some war zones, and it is cool as hell. I absolutely love it. It is an amazing design tactical, and overall, very good addition to Virulence in my opinion. So, arguably worthwhile to get that accuracy. Then you also have another tactical that you can run for AoE. So basically what happens is whenever you throw your corrosive grenade or sharp bomb, in this case, hemorrhaging, basically it spreads a hemorrhaging blast effect. So basically that would be your toxic blast. And your dirty blast, which would be like your equivalent to your like sniper replacement, becomes basically an AoE of everybody within the vicinity of your main target affected by sharp bomb, which should be a corrosive grenade. So basically it just turns it into more of an AoE spammy spec. However, the problem is you're really only using 2 of these. And most of the time, unless there's a lot of cleave, and then you'll prioritize it a little bit more. However, you probably aren't going to go energy hungry if you do that. So this tactical, I've found almost no chance to ever get this to fully work. So this is a tactical I don't necessarily recommend, but it is a thing, and it's very fun if you could potentially get it to work. Then here's your Synox, basically, just like Lethality. So basically it just makes your Toxic Blast do more damage, which would be Hemorrhaging Blast in this case. And dealing damage with your snipe replacement basically just adds another internal bleed. So what I mean by that is like whenever I pop this on and I use my snipe, this applies a dot. This is purely from the tactical, so it's an extra dot. So you've got a total 3 dots here. So with all these dots on the target, it's quite a few to look at. A lot of numbers on your screen. If you like seeing that kind of stuff, it's pretty effective. It's decent skill to it, and in general, it looks really nice. However, I do prefer Ultraviolet, and I would say Ultraviolet is a lot easier to play. So to keep it with a grain of salt, that is a big difference. You're kind of like going from a skill turret build to a burst. However, you're still not really either. You're more of a .AoE spec. So just take that. In Strive, going over our tacticals, obviously we have stimulated and basically 5% increased damage. That's whatever, you know, not amazing, but it's there's virtually no other ones technically worthwhile for us in PvP. Then you have Second Wind. You can run this over stimulated. It's definitely worthwhile. However, I'm just running stimulated because I don't really care if I die or not in war zones anymore. It's something that I've not cared about in a long time. So I'm just out there being greedy as all hell. That's just kind of my play style. That's what I like to do. And once you understand how to play under pressure, it's really a gamble that you're taking to kind of like make it pay off. And it's kind of fun for me and a little bit challenging to keep me engaged with the game still. So to go over our talents real quick, these are the talents that I'm running. Sometimes you can run the Scrambling Field, which is the AoE Dome. This will give you and your allies 20% damage reduction while they're inside of it. It lasts for 25 seconds. It's a very strong team ability. Then you also have Diversion. Whether in this, or basically if they're in this and they don't have like Shroud or something to purge it immediately, they basically get accuracy debuff by 40%. Or is it 45? 45%. That's an incredible amount of accuracy debuff, and most people will miss things. However, they have to be in it, so you can't just throw it on yourself and expect all these range players to suddenly miss. You have to get them in it, they have to stay in it, and whenever they walk out of it, they pretty much get rid of it. So it is a very nice AoE denial, and paired with Scrambling Field, It's very hard to kill anybody through both of those. The team ability that it brings with just that alone is very high, and it's very strong. And it's one of the main reasons why it's always been relevant in Arena, especially like competitive games too. And when it comes to even back in the day, ranked AV8, it's always been relevant because of its team utility. It's AoE knockback, so for example, that now automatically roots people if you get hit by it. So there are a lot of nice things that this class has to offer compared to its peers. And then you also have CC immunity, so whenever you're in cover, you pop in trench, you get CC immunity. I'm currently taking the hollow locate, or I guess hideout. So basically what happens here is if I put that there, this is one thing to keep in mind too. If you use this ability, it actually does take you out of cover. So I'm in cover over here. I use this ability, I'm now teleported here, but I'm not in cover, so I have to get back in cover. If you're not in cover, you can be lapped too, so you want to make sure that you stay in cover all the time and don't use the ability that allows you to just roll into place and take cover. That ability will probably get you in a lot of bad situations and a lot of bad positions that you don't want to be in. That'll probably get you killed in PvP. So I highly recommend taking crouch instead. And then when it comes to the rest of our talents, it's kind of like what we've run. I like the reset because I like the armor penetration and the accuracy tied to it. And then in addition, basically increasing your damage while you have that. So the armor penetration does stack with this armor penetration that you get here. And then it also resets this ability, basically, blood sights. And when you pop blood sights, you get the critical hit chance and critical hit damage plus the armor penetration on your wounding shots, which is your hole on Virulence. So basically you have a big window between these two abilities to do a lot of damage to somebody regardless of what they are. However, it absolutely shreds mercenaries. Mercenaries get absolutely eaten alive by Virulence. And it's probably one of the most satisfying classes to play into Mercenary because you're able to just sit on them the entire game. There's virtually nothing they can do about it. It's pretty good at hitting PT too, but not Pyrotech. And for the most part, anything that can't resist dodge or basically have a defense chance or a decent defense chance against them, this class can just eat through it. Its mixed damage profile makes it a very good pick. And overall, its durability is not terrible. So for example, when we're sitting in cover, you're healing for 12,000 passively. This is faster than Cult of Probes. This is more health than Cult of Probes. So just put that into perspective, this class is doing about 6,000 to 7,000 HPS effectively while you're in cover. That's a lot of healing. That's arguably sometimes more than most healers put out. And I mean by bad healers, not really good healers. Do take that with a grain of salt. Sometimes healers can be guarding a node and whatnot, so their healing output will be a little bit lower. But in general, it is a very solid healing amount, and most classes that actually have healing defensives do not do this amount of healing. If anything, I do think that this should probably be nerfed. And then when it comes to defensive management, you have Absorb, so it works just like Shield Probe on Lethality, except for you don't have the 5-second reduction on it. During your roll, you're immune to everything except for overload. If somebody manages to overload you during your roll, you have a potential to get roll bugged. I say this in the video, trying to teach people how to play classes or just to help them choose a class, and I tell them how to counter it. That's not helpful. Okay, so if you ever do get roll bugged or if you ever do get knocked back during your overload, what you should do is do a /bug report and say, hey, you know, I am having an issue and I got stuck because I rolled, and this guy, he popped overload on me at the same time. And when I rolled, I have not maxed out defense chance, but you have over 100% defense chance. So theoretically, the force damage of the overload, which is not considered force for some reason, basically knocked back and rooted you. Sometimes in the animation of rolling, you can get stuck. Your character doesn't know whether it's rolling or not. So you're not technically supposed to be able to be damaged while you're in roll. So that's why that happens. I've made a lot of tickets about it, trying to get it fixed. People just don't seem to care over there to get it fixed, or they just never see it. Either way, if it happens to you, feel free to make a ticket. Hopefully we can get it fixed soon. Other than that, you're immune during your roll. Your roll is one of your good defenses. So like if you have thermal detonator on you, you can use that to avoid that. Then you have evasion. This is your main defensive right here. You want to take the talent to ensure that you have the 200% dodge. Obviously it doesn't make you immune to getting hit by those abilities, it just reduces the damage. So when you're taking ranged and melee, it does dodge, but force and tech attacks only have 75% damage reduced for 3 seconds. And it also resets your roll. So that's another good thing to think about. And then you also have a bag of tricks, which will reset the majority of your abilities. So if you pop that, we immediately get our surrender back and we can roll again. So that's one thing to think about. You're kind of just playing around your low cooldowns and trying to save your bag of tricks as long as you can. Other than that, going into a quick rotational example, so we'll just go ahead and dot both or just this target. Go ahead and pop that, and we'll go immediately into coal. Then we'll snipe, and then we'll do the execute ability, and then we'll do another coal. And then we do another snipe, execute ability, and then another coal. And then we'll reapply our dots. First pop that. And just go into more dots. And that is literally all you do in this class. You don't do anything else. Sometimes you'll tab dart. You'll tab target and dot people. But other than that, unless there's like a huge stack of people, you can use this ability. But chances are you're not really going to use it. The only reason you'll ever use speed shot is if you need to get some damage out and you don't have time to channel and you don't really have anything else. Otherwise you can use thermal grenade, but if they're immune to deal damage at the time, like if they're shrouding, speed shot is the go-to. Other than that, that is Virulence. The interesting spec. If it had any more defensive power and it didn't see a nerf to the 3% heal every 2 seconds, it would be way stronger than what it currently is. But that is the current state of this one. This is definitely one of the easiest classes to play, and it's one of the strongest, and its range has a phase walk just like Madness, and it also has an anti-leap mechanic, so players cannot use gap closures on you while you're in this mode. It's a very fun, very interesting spec to play. I really love the changes that they did to it in 7.0, but for the most part, a lot of classes did not get this preferential treatment, I guess. Anyway, we'll go on to the next class now. Alright, we're almost an hour in, and we are at Lightning, the first class in A tier. This class doesn't have that many binds. It's very straightforward. Overload's still the best ability in the game for this class. Anyway, moving into what we're doing here, we're going to start with our stats first. So these are the stats that I run. You can run different stats, even so much as so it's just one alacrity piece, because that will give you the alacrity threshold with the stacks of lightning. You get like, what is it, 4 stacks or 5 stacks or whatever. Give you 5% alacrity. On top of one alacrity piece is enough to hit the 7.13%, which will unlock 1.4 GCD for you. And then you can run like 5,000 crit. The only reason I ever recommend that is if you're bored and you want to try something. I actually really enjoy that one. And the main reason I enjoy that is because your shock ends up being a lot of your damage sometimes. And if you're running this talent right here, your shock will be a lot more of your damage if you're running this talent. And when you're running lower critical, your shock doesn't crit very much. But when your critical is higher, around 5,000, it crits a lot more often. And when it's already a majority of your damage, it does increase your damage quite a bit. However, it does kind of like dumb down the way that you play. Anyway, getting into like what we're doing here is, why do we have 3200? So at 3209, I believe it is, the higher alacrity threshold for lightning. So I have 10% and then I get another 5% from, what do you call it? The lightning bolts. So basically what I'm going to do right now, just use this ability a couple times to show you. So we're building our stacks. All right, now that we're maxed out, you'll be able to see my true alacrity. So we're at 15.4. 15.41 is for 1.3. So now that we have 1.3 unlocked, this is kind of like the stats I'll have at Warzone. Normally, getting this is probably going to be a little bit harder to attain. You're probably going to be 100 points over. That's totally fine. The main reason I'm even able to achieve that is because I have the new augments. So to take that with a grain of salt, probably, and have access to those right away. However, you are going to be able to hit at least 3200 if you actually are able to get your hands on the 296s. So that's still a win. You're not wasting too much stat. And then outside of that, we're running the standard sorcerer implants. These are honestly just so good for DPS. Again, as I would say, the best implants in game for DPS. There's no other really implants that are as good as these. The normal standard relics, and then going into our tactical choice, we're running Volt Rush. I like to run the AoE variant pretty much only on lightning. That's just the way I like to play. However, you do have the option to run Stormwatch, which will increase your single target damage a lot on a target, so much so to the point that I feel that it is completely overkill, and I find very little use to this, because most of the time the player dies before they get really any true value out of it. And then Aaron's Haste sometimes can be good, but for the most part, I just don't like using it. It doesn't flow well. It doesn't feel good. For those players that are getting a lot of empty GCDs where they don't know what to press, this can be good. Then going into our talents, this is what we run. So I'm taking Suppressive Current. So basically what happens here, it's very important to explain this. So we're just going to go ahead and hard cast this. It's going to apply Suppressive Current to the target. And then if I do this, it basically redoes Chain Lightning route on them. And if I use Chain Lightning again, it'll reapply Force Current. And this is also AoE, by the way. Then when you reapply it, it'll do that little Crushing Darkness animation, but it'll also reapply the mini route and slow them again. So when you have that on the target, it's a lot of AoE control. Force Light or Chain Lightning is very good in general. And then when you use Suppressive Current on top of it, you get a lot of roots and a lot of control and a lot of slows. It's just overall really good. And for whatever reason, whenever you use Shock, when you have the talent, it'll show up in your debuffs, the movement speed buff. I don't know why that's a thing, but you know it is. This would be the single target option that you would run. Sometimes you can run this one. It's actually not that bad to run. If you're never going to use Force Storm to get the value out of Suppressive Current, you would want to take Forbidden Knowledge so you can get some extra healing. However, Halted Offense is for a single target. And the ability actually does a crap ton of damage. So for example, let's just go ahead and get a proc and just use it right off the bat. 61,000. I don't have Affliction on the target. I don't have any of my buffs. I don't have anything really going on there. And 61,000 is pretty good. It can add up to 100,000. So that's a very good single target ability. It becomes one of your hardest hitters when you are playing this. However, Chain Lightning is a ability that is AoE, and it will most of the time in AoE do more damage than Halted Offense. But if you're doing a lot of single target and there's just not much AoE to be had, Halted Offense will pull ahead by a considerable margin. Then I'm running the basic increased damage after Throwing Blast. And then I'm also running the damage reduction after you use Throwing Blast. It's pretty basic. You can take the raid buff if you're greedy like me. This one I really only recommend if you have a healer, but overall it's still kind of meh. I would prefer the damage reduction, really. And then you also have the ability to run the root, but I really just don't find this to be very useful. And then this one I don't really find any use for, so pretty much we're just sticking with this one. And then you also have the ability to apply Electrocute. That will basically reduce the damage the player does by 25%. And then if they were to get taunted, it would be I like separately reducing by 30%, so it would already go into account that you've already reduced it by 25, if that makes sense. And the ideal with popping something like that, this is why lightning is as good as it is, especially in team gameplay, and especially 8v8. If you know there's somebody worth throwing that damage debuff on, what you want to do is get your max stacks of alacrity, so you have your 5% alacrity. So then you're at 15%. Pop polarity, put you at 35%, and then use your hard stun. That brings it down to a 36 second cooldown. The more alacrity you have, the lower cooldown it'll be. So you'll have it up even more soon. So that's one thing to think about. Other than that, that's kind of like the basis of that. You're going into surging speed. You can run the unnatural figure for the extra damage reduction, increased healing, and reduced cooldown of natural preservation. That one actually stacks really well with Forbidden Knowledge. Then you also have Stun Bubble, which is also really good against a lot of melee. And then if you're running Elemental Convection, you pretty much have to go Volt Rush, otherwise it's kind of useless. Phase Walk is what you would run when you're running single target. And Immersion's pretty much just always taken because you need the mobility and the purges. So getting into a quick example of the loop, or I guess rotational loop with Elemental Convection, excuse me. Alright, so polarity shift, obviously when you use your force speed, it's going to lower it by 5 seconds. So what we're going to do here is instead, normally if you're doing PvE, you probably will open with Crushing Darkness and so on and so forth. But let's say you're doing PvP, what you can do is put your Affliction on, use this, go into your Crushing Darkness, then pop all your off the global cooldown abilities into that, and then you can get a Force Lightning, or Force Storm off, and then Shock, use your Volt Rush, Chain Lightning again, do that, Chain Lightning again, Force Storm, and then you kind of like go and do the same thing all over again. Obviously there's plenty of points where you can completely drop using Crushing Darkness in favor of using Chain Lightning and Volt Rush. So basically the way that that works is like pretty much after every Thundering Blast, you're able to Chain Lightning, and then when this is glowing you can use that ability. Then you can immediately follow with another Chain Lightning, and you can use that again if you wanted to, but basically you're just kind of looping. Thundering Blast, Chain Lightning, Volt Rush, Chain Lightning. That's kind of like how that works. Then obviously Lightning Flash is very good. Shock is good if they're slowed, so anytime after Chain Lightning. Crushing Darkness is one of your main single target damaging abilities, so you're going for single target damage on the Crushing Darkness and Thundering Blast. And Lightning Flash will reduce the channel time for Crushing Darkness. Now, if you want more information with this, I play this a little bit unlike other people. I used to play this class a lot one time ago, back when you still had your big heal. So one of the heals that healers have now, this class used to have, and I just don't like Dark Heal. Dark Heal heals for like nothing, 17,000. Like, that is horrible. The class just doesn't have the same healing that it used to. But it has a lot of damage, which is why it's ranked the way it is, even though it's able to AoE impact an entire team very well. But for the most part, it's a little bit different. So let's go into Stormwatch just to give you an example. A lot of the PvE guides will be a little bit better for specifically, obviously we would swap to phase 1, specifically for stuff like this, but typically you'll get your dot on the target, use your flash, use a Crushing Darkness, whip up these abilities, use our Thundering Blast, and then save our empowerment for specifically a halted offense. The reason why you would do that is because it hit 102,000 there. I don't know if you guys saw, but that would be the main reason to do that. For the most part, what you're doing is obviously having Lightning Flash on the target, Crushing Darkness, and with Affliction already pre-applied, into Thundering Blast, into Halted Offense, Shock, and then Lightning Bolt until you can kind of like do the loop all over again. That's just kind of like how it flows. And once you know that, you know, put your dot on the target, put your flash, crushing darkness on the target, and to thundering blast into auto defense. That's kind of like your main burst. And then if you're running the shock talent, shock to lightning bolt, usually that is enough to like pretty much almost 100% owe somebody, especially if they don't have any defensives. So it's definitely really nice. I don't really like running this because it's very noisy, and just even trying to showcase it is a little loud for my ears. And then running this tactical basically just makes your thundering blast hit a little bit harder, but also instant. The main reason I don't even like running it is because halted defense just hits harder. And if I really want something that hits hard, I'd rather go with halted. There are some use cases in Arena that it would be better. Sorry, like this whole time I've had to burp and it just refuses to come out. It's driving me crazy. I guess that's what happens when you talk for a long time, all in one take. So now we'll go to the next class, and I'll catch you guys in a minute here. Alright, and we're back with some Pyrotech. So, typically speaking, this is one of the tankiest of the melee specs that you can play. And the main reason why is because Colto Overload gives you 30% dot, well, that's going to be dot damage reduction. It gives you 30% flat damage reduction, which is huge. It also heals you during that time, and healing gets better over time. And on top of that, you also get cooldown reduction when you are attacked for the ability to come back off cooldown. So you're getting your Colto a lot, especially when you're getting tunneled. You have additional damage reduction with just your regular shield, and your power yield actually lasts for 30 seconds, the full 30 seconds, instantly maxing out its stacks as soon as you are not instantly maxing. AP is the one that instantly maxes, but this will stack up pretty fast. It'll give you a lot of damage reduction, and overall, there's not really anything else as tanky. It pretty much always has thermal yield or Colto, which makes it very hard when playing against an experienced player to like take it down. However, as a new player, think of it as power yield is your main defensive and Colto your secondary main defensive, and your shield your no defensive, like your for lack of a better word, oh shit button. If that makes sense. Then medpack, your shield and medpack is like your most valued possessions as Pyrotech, because you'll have power yield all the time, you'll have Colto all the time. Those two are the abilities that you want to save the most. And then Adrenal you'll have pretty much all the time too. It's 3-minute cooldown, kind of like your shield, which is 2 minutes, but you get the general idea. Shield is the thing that you would pop if your Adrenal, or not your Adrenal, but your Warzone medpack, so you can get more value out of your energy shield. Sometimes you'll have to pop all your defensive if you're being extremely tunneled, but it will survive for pretty much the entire duration of your Colto if you do. Even if you're being tunneled by a ton of players, which is pretty nice. So going into our stats, we're pretty much running our standard stats here. I don't bother to run accuracy, even though there is a good talent here that will make your raw shot do a dot damage thing, which is elemental damage. It's very nice. It's a very nice ability in general. Normally you don't really bother if you roll shot too much, but because you have this talent, it makes it very worthwhile. And then I run the PvP tactical because that's just my preference. So increase your flame attack damage by 10% for 20 seconds once you actually have it fully stacked. So if I flame sweep here, you'll see my stats going up. We're at 2, goes all the way to 5. Once you have 5, you have a reduced cost on your steering wave. And then it'll apply the tactical buff, which is flame dissipation, which gives you 10% increased flame attack damage. 10 seconds, or is it 20 seconds or whatever. So basically what you would do is have that up and then use your rail shot to get the dot on the target. But you obviously have to have your dot on the target first before it even to apply, because it doesn't just apply just because. You have to have your incendiary missile on the target. Other than that, we're looking at our normal implants. You could run second wind if you really wanted to, but for the most part I just run stimulated and a shock trooper. Mandalorian Ordnance is not terrible, however most of the time I just don't recommend running it. I find stimulated to be much more useful because you're getting infinite value out of stimulated because it's increasing your dot damage overall. But then you have other tactical options, which is superheated fuel. I never really liked this tactical. I'm glad it got nerfed, but also at the same time, I'm pretty indifferent. The single target damage of Pyro didn't need nerfed. I didn't think that was a thing that needed to happen. Superheated fuel definitely probably needed a nerf. Other than that, I don't really care about this tactical. This one, Explosive Weaponry, is a very fun tactical. It's pretty much what I used last expansion when I played a lot of grip rings. They're very fun to use, and it has a lot of burst potential, especially in AoE and double carb. However, I would say overall it's not as good as it used to be because you already get AoE punch for free. That's where a lot of your damage is coming from nowadays. I don't know why I'm spec'd into this. I must have been messing around, but typically you're running the AoE punch. You have the dot incendiary. If you're having a really hard time remembering just to use your incendiary or how to use it properly, Mandalorian Warhead, it's not terrible. And then the Whistling Bird is also nice because it'll do a little explosion and it'll do a little extra damage. And then you have the option to run these two. Personally, I don't run either of them. I always go for Chilled Retribution because it gets your CC immunity on your energy shield, which is huge. It also reduces your cooldown of Carbonize, which allows you to AoE CC people a lot more often. And this one's pretty much standard. I know I didn't go over it when I went over AP, but I pretty much always run this. I almost never run any of the other ones because you don't need to. And then going into this one, AoE DR on the tankiest class in the game is a bit overkill, but it can be very good if you're running against another Pyro, Vengeance, or Lightning player. Personally, running these slow because it helps with uptime, and in general, when I run into a Vengeance Juggernaut, I'm making sure that I am not feeding them slows. That's definitely something that you want to keep in mind. Don't feed Vengeance Juggernauts slows, don't feed Rage Juggernauts slows. They will hurt you very badly, and everybody else too if you feed them slows. So normally I'm running Hitman, but it's a very unique case where I'm running this, and then Close and Personal is just really nice whenever you're in melee cleave because it basically just adds some extra damage. Basically never change hydraulic overrides unless you're playing Arena, and for the most part you always want Efficient Suit because this will allow your Coulter to be a CC breaker. However, it doesn't break all kinds of CC, it's only specific kinds of CC, like non-soft CC, so like hard stuns. And that's pretty much it for that. To give you a quick rundown, kind of like how it goes. We'll set up for that real quick. So I think if you're in a war zone, obviously don't pop your explosive fuel right away, but you'll go around getting scorches on everybody. So you just run up, scorch this guy, you'd run over to this guy, scorch this guy, run over this guy, scorch this guy. You get 3 scorches out. You're going to get more than that. So basically everybody that you can easily get a scorch on, get a scorch on everybody. And try not to lose too much health while you're doing that, obviously, but sometimes you won't have much of a choice. So just try to get as many scorches out to people that you can without dying or kind of like throwing by doing it. Sometimes you kind of got to know when you can do it and when you can't do it. All right, now to do a quick example of the rotation. So with Flame Dissipation that I'm running, we're going to get our dot on the target, our other dot, and then we're explosive fuel into Shoulder Cannon, into Searing Wave, Immolate, Punch, and then Flaming Fist. And obviously our Rocket Punch, not Rocket Punch, sorry, Roll Shot, sorry, it's been a long day for me. And this is just kind of like how it goes. And then you'll reapply your dots. And one thing to keep in mind of is that whenever you're using Incendiary Missile, you don't need to apply this to every single target. You only need to apply it to your main target, right? And then when you're going for a situation where you want to spread Incendiary Missile, you use Searing Wave to spread it. Searing Wave will spread your Incendiary Missile, and that's kind of like how you want to use it. You don't want to be applying it to everybody. However, if you're from range and you need to do some damage, Incendiary Missile into auto attack. That is your like main way that you'll do damage when you're at range and you're trying to get closer. Other than that, that's kind of like how it plays. And if there's ever cleave, instead of using Flame Burst, you'll be using Flame Sweep. And that's pretty much it. And you also have this ability, I guess. Very good for cleave, if there's a lot of people there. Excuse me. And yeah, that's Pyro. We are over an hour in. So let's go ahead and get to the next class. Alright, and we're back with another class. This is Rage Juggernaut. Quickly realizing this might be my longest video ever. My DCD Management guide is 2 hours and 30 minutes. We are probably going to head over that for this one, unfortunately, but that's okay. I don't mind. Going into our stats, we are running our normal stats right here. We don't really change much. Sometimes we run accuracy, but not necessary to really do that. However, if you do want to, it's not a terrible ideal because fear strike is important. If you're going to run Sin Second Amulet or whatever, I would probably recommend running some accuracy. And then on top of that, I seem to have not grabbed my other tacticals. Yeah, right here. So normally, no, not that one. Excuse me. Alright, so normally we would run, if we want a single target, High Risk, Coronary, don't even know if I'm saying that right. I'll use that one. That basically turns your strike to have like an additional damage on it. And then Grit Teeth. If you're getting hit a lot, having your super ward up a little bit more is sometimes nice. Sometimes I run that with Second Wind when the Q is all DPS, and I kind of just get to bully people. Sometimes it's pretty fun, sometimes it's whatever. However, the extra durability that you gain from that is definitely noticeable and definitely fun when the Q is all DPS. However, whenever it's not DPS, there's a healer. I usually swap off of it, which is pretty easy. So you just have Second Wind and you would replace Second Wind over this one right here, the increased melee damage. For the most part, I run Enraged Crush, and the reason why I run Enraged Crush is because it gives you more damage that you didn't have before. So basically, Force Crush does a lot of damage, and prior to having Enraged Crush, you didn't have a way to basically AoE Force Crush. So all that AoE damage that you're getting from Force Crush is damage that you otherwise would have never had. And on top of that, you can tie that, and you can make sure that that Force Crush gets the benefit of your Enrage and your Champion's Precision, which allows you to get a little extra damage out of it, and it AoE slows everybody just for a brief second, which is nice. Now, it definitely gets rid of the utility of having Force Crush as a slow, but it gives you more damage overall. It's the main reason I use that. I like that. However, it's a personal preference. Now, going into our talents, I run the critical hit chance and critical hit damage. This is for all of your abilities, so there's really no reason to not run this. Some people like the trauma, but honestly, extra damage on all your abilities is just way better. I run AoE Scream because it applies a slow, but also at the same time, it's extra damage that you otherwise wouldn't have, and I honestly think the slow is more valuable than the extra brute. Sometimes I might actually even run Sweeping Slash just to reveal Stealthers. I don't actually use the ability for its intended purpose, but I use it just to reveal Stealthers because I know where they are. I just don't have my original kit, I guess you could say, to reveal them. So sometimes I'll take this just to get this back. We used to have this ability for free, and you would use it to get Stealthers out of combat, or out of stealth and back into combat. It's really unfortunate. A lot of the AoEs got randomly pruned, and I totally understand it, but also at the same time, it's, you know, it was a tool to pull Stealthers back out, and it kind of sucks to lose it. So sometimes I'll actually take it just to get the power back, especially if I'm hunting a Stealther. Then I'm running the Obliterate, reduces cooldown and rage for 3 seconds. This is not necessary at all. You can run the extra damage reduction. Honestly, I would actually recommend running this one. The only reason I even run this one is just because, you know, screw it. Why not send full damage anyway? You know, people are going to hit you anyway. So sometimes I like that, and just having a rage up more often allows you to be a little bit more versatile. Like speed-wise, like being able to zoom, get out of roots faster, and apply more pressure. However, the extra damage mitigation is definitely very helpful. And in a situation where I'm just putting everything into offense, that my offense is my defense, I do think Rage Engine is really good. Especially if I'm running high alacrity, which I'm currently not. And then we run Domination. We don't bother with these other two. Fierce Power is a noob bait. Never take this. The basically 0 cooldown ability one is very cool, but I wouldn't recommend it, especially not as a learning player. And then we take the Warbringer. This is just pretty much mandatory. And then War Master, getting the extra damage reduction and CC immunity is very good. We have Mad Dash for durability, or not durability, but for mobility. And then you would run Saber Reflect if you need more durability. And then we're running Pooled Hatred. That's just preference. That's more damage whenever you get slowed. However, if you want more durability, through Passion to run. And that's pretty much it. So typically when you start a Warzone, once you become more advanced as a player, there are some niche things that you can do. I feel like I've given little nuggets of knowledge per class so far. So I want to explain something that is kind of unique to this class, and specifically this spec. So much relief. Alright, sorry about that. I finally get the burp out. Alright, now, what I was going to explain is that when you pop in Rage, you get a whole bunch of Rage for free. Right, that's really nice. So what you could do here is before the match is about to start, even on Arenas, this is very useful. Popping this for extra Rage, and then obviously you can use your Smash to make sure that your Rage doesn't decay as fast as it is once you hit that threshold where your Rage starts decaying really fast. And then you can immediately, probably by like this time, like 20 seconds, you know, when you have about 5 seconds left, you have some Rage for your opener. So you can go ahead and leap, you have like 5 Rage, immediately pop and Rage again. That can be pretty useful, and especially if you catch the timing perfectly where you already have 1 stack. So when you leap, you immediately have 2 stacks and you still have your destruction proc. And what I mean by destruction is this, Shockwave. So you get 2 stacks of this as soon as you leap, and you'll be able to immediately go into Raging Burst. Obviously you'll be missing your other buffs, but you'll be able to immediately pop and Rage, which is very nice, because that means you can then use Obliterate, and then you can use your next 2 stacks and your Shockwave on your Smash. Something to think about. However, obviously new players, don't worry about it. Once you fully understand how to play it, it'll feel a little bit better. So for example, I'll just show you a quick little opener that I do. So normally I'll use Saber Throw or Sundering Assault, it doesn't really matter. And I'll immediately get 2 stacks into Force Crash into Rage and Burst. And I'll pop in Rage with Furious Strike, use Retaliation to Dispatch. Alright, it's not really even Dispatch, but you kind of like get the ideal. That's Republic. And you kind of just loop this way over and over. And you can also use your Ravage as you're running away to do damage without losing a GCD. It's definitely been a little bit since I've parsed or really played Rage, so it's always nice to come back and do this. It's a little therapeutic too. Rage is a very satisfying class to play. Visually, I think it looks really good. It sounds really good. It feels pretty strong. And I love the mobility that it has to offer. It plays more like a Marauder than Marauder does in current state. The only difference is that Carnage is a class that you can't really duplicate, unfortunately. And its identity is very weird right now. Now, when it comes to Rage Juggernaut, you are durability-wise not that great. However, you do have healing defenses. So when you pop Saber Ward, like the first second, I think, second and a half, roughly, you'll have 100% defense chance. So that means any white damage or just any white damage in general will basically be immune for that second. And then outside of that, you just have 50% defense chance after that's gone. And then you have 25% yellow damage absorb. 25% yellow damage absorb is not very good, let me tell you. Your durability is not great. So mainly you're looking to leap all the time. So you can get this talent right here, Unstoppable. That'll give you the damage reduction and CC immunity when you leap. And then also with Rage, whenever you use your Smash or your Raging Burst, you get an extra 10% damage reduction. So you're looking at leaping and using your Raging Burst or Smash all the time so you can maintain your damage reduction. So it's a very proactive playstyle, a very aggressive one. And you have to kind of just maintain that to keep your damage reduction. Otherwise, you're very, very, very squishy. Again, if you guys are interested in defensive management, I do have a dedicated video on that, so do feel free to check that in the pinned comment. Other than that, there's not much more to Rage that I can really share with you guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Other than that, we're going to move on to the next class. Alright, now we're back to the next class, Advanced Prototype. It's another day, so I was far too tired to continue yesterday. My mic might sound a little bit different, but that's because we have some background noise going on, so I tried to change some things to make it a little bit more clear. The first thing we're going to start off with is our stats. We're running our normal stats. We're running stimulated, so pretty much every single time you're running stimulated, you're going to want to make sure that you're probably playing with no accuracy, so you can get more value out of your stimulated, therefore doing more damage. Majority of your damage is going to be yellow damage, but when it comes to sustained damage, you're looking at rail shot. And when it comes to getting the advantage over other tanky classes, so for example, if you're playing group ranked, rail shot is pretty important, and having accuracy to land rail shot is going to give you an edge. However, that's not really a thing for newer players to ever worry about, so for the most part, you're going about 4800 critical. 4850 is roughly the critical DR for Advanced Prototype, and then you're running the standard alacrity. Also, by the way, for you guys, if you guys are interested in hitting stat points, just ask me for like ways to hit it with what current available like augments and whatnot that you have. But for the most part, you can just run 4 enhancements to hit the alacrity threshold. You'll be a little bit over, but that's completely fine. If you are looking to min-max it a little bit better, just let me know and I'll be happy to help. I also have older guides covering gear, but for the most part, you're really just adding numbers. It's not too complicated, but for the most part, there are ways to do that. Getting into our set bonuses, we're running stimulated, as I said, shock trooper. We also like veteran ranger, second wind. Let me find these real quick. I don't know why they're not on me. The veteran ranger right here gives you a chance to have your shoulder cannon do more damage on a burst window. Very nice. We also have Mandalorian armaments. That's another one that you could use. For the most part, it's really just those and specialist package, but I don't really recommend them. Mostly just because I find this combo to be the best. And if you're going to swap stimulated, you should probably look at second wind or Mandalorian armaments. And that's mainly just because Mandalorian armaments is a flat damage increase. It's not like an amazing damage increase, but it is a damage increase nonetheless. And the main reason why I don't use it, by the way, is because when you're using it, the uptime is not forever, like stimulated. And it's also got an issue where if you're not able to attack somebody, it's just going to attack whoever you first hit or whoever you last hit. So for example, I'm hitting somebody, he pops reflect or a powerful defensive that I just don't want to use my auto cannon on. I switch to a new target. The auto cannon most likely will still go to that previous target. So if they have like mercenary reflect, you can kind of like grief yourself and let them get more healing from that. You don't want that. For the most part, it's not a perfect implant, but it's not bad. And if you're not really focusing on like not feeding into reflex, don't really worry about it. Going over our implants, power detonator is the one that I recommend for most players. It's going to just make it a lot easier to play. Detonation would be your AoE one, but for the most part, landing flame sleep on people, especially when you just thrown your thermal detonator and then you're trying to flame sleep on it, and if you miss it the first time, you got one more chance, and that chance is going to be expensive because using flame sleep twice in a row is very expensive to do. It's not very good damage either, so I do say use this tactical sparingly. It's not that good, and even if you do get cleave, learning how to do your rotation properly, you'll be able to do a lot of damage just through normal gameplay rather than focusing on just trying to get one gimmick down. This tactical would be 100 times better if it procced off of Shatter Slug, so much so that the empowered thermal detonator probably shouldn't work with this, but hey, this tactical could be really good. Flame Sleep is just a really bad ability. Then you have Energized Vambrace. This one basically allows it so if you're playing against really tanky classes, having increased dot damage is really nice, and then on top of that, it increases your filler damage, which is Magnetic Blast. So if you're ever in a situation where you're finding yourself having to fight from range more often, and you're looking at tab dotting a lot, there's a lot of value to be had with this one. Overwhelming Offense is just a general versatile tactical, and I just use this one the most because there are a lot of situations that will benefit some of these other tacticals, but this one will benefit all of them. So this is just like the universal one size fits all. So I recommend that one. And then going into our talents, just like Pyrotech, you still kind of run the same things up here. These ones you don't really change too much. Obviously 64 you can change to whatever you want. However, when it comes to 43, you can take this one. This is more of an arena thing. I highly recommend playing with the 15 meter ones because it's going to teach you how to play from medium range. And then Advanced Terminator Droid, outside of coordinated gameplay, you're not really going to find yourself using this too much, and if you are using this, you're probably running Second Wind too, but also at the same time, you're probably looking for more of a duelist playstyle. So if you do like attacking the side nodes a lot, looking for duels and whatnot, running Second Wind with this is probably not a terrible ideal overall, but if you take a grain of salt, the class is not amazing at dueling, but when it comes to stomping noobs, it is really good. Defensively, it just doesn't have the same power as a Juggernaut, so Juggernaut sometimes can be better if you build it that way. And then we pretty much always go the Powered Burst, however there's sometimes that Heat Zone can be very good. For the most part, you don't want to bother with this. While you're learning, obviously, Power Burst is just the mandatory one that you'll pretty much always go. This is flat damage increase. But if you ever get in a situation where there's a high cleave game and you're probably not going to get your thermals out too often, or I mean, obviously you're going to get your thermals out, but if people have like ways to immune it, like Mad Dash, Force Barrier, and stuff like that, things that will make your power detonator not as useful, especially if people are guard swapping on it all the time, having the AoE energy burst can be nice. However, again, take it with a grain of salt. You have to be relatively experienced already with the rotation to get full value out of this, otherwise Power Burst is always going to be better. Then we take the Leap. We don't really bother with the other two. The Leap is just too good, as you get double Leap, and the second use of the Leap kind of ignores several different things, which is kind of nice. And by several different things, I mean like Crouch, I'm pretty sure it goes through, which is pretty nutty. And then going to Retracted Refresh. Actually, maybe it doesn't go through Crouch. It goes through something that doesn't make much sense, but regardless, Double Leap is really good. Retracted Refresh is the general one that you'll end up using just because it'll do more damage. So let's say I have a dot on this person and I refresh it. Basically, an AoE is going to go out around them. That's much easier to use than it is to have the additional damage happening if you already have a dot on them and then you refresh it. So this one will be a single target extra bonus damage. The extra bonus damage is not as much as the AoE, if that makes sense. And obviously if there's AoE DR in play, Juggler can outperform. However, that's usually just not the case. And Easy Prey is just a noob bait talent, so don't bother with that one. Other than that, that's the talents, and I will show you a quick kind of display of I did not mean to hit that button. A quick display of how not to use your leap, but how to use your abilities real quick. Just let me pull up the keybind profile, so just give me 1 second. Alright, we are all set. So sometimes when you're a little bit more experienced on AP, you know the rotation is 1, 2, 3, 4. I have a couple of different video guides on this class. I highly recommend checking them out if you're truly interested in learning AP. Basically, 3/4 GCD, or really third, roughly, somewhere around there, you'll be able to proc Particle Accelerator. So what you want to be focused on is constantly procking that and make sure that you always proc as soon as you can. Then using your rail shot before you have to proc the next one, which is why you follow the 1, 2, 3, 4 rotation. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to open up by throwing the thermal, since it has travel time, and on top of that has a delayed explosion. You're looking at thermal up and then retractable blade. You want retractable blade on the target because it increases your damage. And then you can sunder the magnetic blast if you're going for maximum burst. To obtain that, you necessarily don't want to throw your thermal immediately. So like you could gut punch, so retractable blade into rocket punch, apply sunder, and then you can magnetic blast into thermal detonator into energy burst where you're unloading explosive fuel and shoulder cannon, and pop power yield, use rail shot. Most likely should have a proc for that because you just used these 2 abilities. And then you can energy burst again, and then you could re-proc your rail shot again. That would be ultimately the highest burst that you could do. However, you usually just don't do that because you want to keep your increased damage by 10% for 15 seconds when your filler window is going. So that way, the next time that you have a burst window, it'll line up again, but also it'll allow you to maintain your high DPS after you do your opener. So your opener, extra 10, was it 15%? Yeah, no, it's a 10%. Extra 10% is nice, right? But only for, well, I mean, I suppose I can just show you. So normally you'll do something like this. Instead of using magnetic blast, I decided to use punch. What I can do here, let's do this, and then do one more auto. I have to reproc PAA. I have 1, 2, 3, pick my 4, and then I can faint heat, energy burst, go on. However, that obviously that's not perfect because I'm thinking about it and trying to explain it all at the same time. This is something that I do subconsciously, actually, at this point. I played way too much of this class. Just like Marauder, I played a ton of Marauder, and this class kind of like replaces Marauder for me because of the current meta that we're currently in. So if we were going for a bigger damage window, obviously, let's say we're not worrying about like just doing a parse rotation, like instant maximum damage. Like here in PvP, it's a little bit different. You'd be looking at getting a punch for the sunder, you get that out so you can get the bonus, and then you immediately start going into your burst damage. Obviously, if you're lucky, you will get your relic procs during that. I got my relic procs a little bit too soon, so that damage is not amazing, but nonetheless, that's kind of like how that would go. And if you can get your relic procs lined up with that, that's great. If you can't, oh well. General ideal is that when you're opening up of your burst, you're going to have all your procs, you're going to have your explosive fuel, you're going to have all of this already amplifying the main burst damage, that you would rather have the extra 10% extra damage when you don't have anything to keep your sustained damage pretty high. Anyway, there's not much more for AP. I have other videos that explain it way better, so if you are interested in AP, definitely check that out. Other than that, these are the stats that you'll be running, and let's go ahead and jump into the next class. This class is been fun, but until you learn how to use your defenses correctly, which again, my DCD management guide will kind of like teach you how to do that. It feels a little squishier, but I'll show you it's actually not that squishy. So going into the next class, this is not the right one. This one, my bad. We're looking at Engineering, Arsenal, Vengeance, IO, Hatred, Deception, Carnage, Fury, Annihilation, Marksman, and so we still have quite a few to cover. Alright, so we'll go into Engineering. I'm going to see if I can try to shorten this a little bit. I love to give a lot of information for most of the stuff, but I realize that this video will be way too long if I stop to talk about it for too long. And obviously, if you guys have any questions individually for each class, feel free to leave them in the comments. I know that I will be skipping over some things. Now, we'll actually go to engineering. I'll have to go to Saboteur because my engineering sniper is not max level. Alright, and now we're back. We're playing some Saboteur here. This is the exact same as engineering. Again, my engineering sniper is not fully maxed out, so we'll be doing it from this point of view. So our stats are a little messed up, my bad. You can run accuracy, but it's arguably not even worthwhile. So what I'm going to do is we're going to fix this real quick. It's this one, yep. That, swap that in. And since pretty much everything is legacy now, you don't really have to worry too much about swapping, fixing your stats. So for example, this is what my stats are. I'm running stimulated. The main reason I'm running stimulated is just because I find it a little bit more helpful. However, if I'm ever not running stimulated, I'm looking at running a second wind and pretty much nothing else. You have two different tactical choices. I actually have three different tactical choices. There's another option that I don't currently own. Tech fragments is a very important currency right now, so I can't afford to spend it. But there's another one, I think it's like MGS or something like that, that increases your AoE damage. It's also a very good one. I'm running the Ruthless Interrogation like very rarely. The main reason I even do that is when I'm single targeting. Other than that, we are pretty much always running the Ionic Discharge because it's really good. But Ruthless Interrogation can be very good, and so can the other AoE tactical. Engineering, outside of this gimmick is still pretty good, but it is more of an AoE spec. With this one, it becomes a little bit better on single target, and then this one it's pretty good single target. However, moving past that, the main reason you would want to play this class is because of its area denial, and on top of that, it's got very good utility and not terrible damage. I would say it's probably the best burst in the game outside of AP, and we'll show you that in just a second. This is definitely one of the more awkward range classes to play, and that's why it's ranked down this low, even though it is very, very strong. And I would consider it even meta because of the complications of some of these abilities. It makes it a lot more complicated than it really needs to be. It's actually a lot more straightforward. I do have a guide on this kind of explaining how to do the rotation, how to weave things in for PvP, and how kind of things work. So do feel free to check that. Let's go into our talent loadout. So this is what I run. I'm currently running the reset. Sometimes I don't even bother with that. I just run with this one. The reset is nice if you actually know that you're going to kill somebody. So if you're running with somebody else and you guys are hitting the same target, this thing is going to probably get more value. However, critical hit damage of explosive charge is insane. Just the option to even take that is crazy to me. This one is also very obnoxious. Whenever you're actually able to put this on somebody, it's actually incredibly annoying to deal with. The class is already super annoying to deal with, but this one just makes it even more annoying. But this one will just make so that your burst window is just that much more obnoxious. And we pretty much can't afford either of these. These are just not good to take. So you need to have your main defensive, and if you don't have this, you're kind of griefing yourself. And then we're taking the thermal grenade and sabotage, deal 20% more damage to targets affected by a shock charge. Shock charge is your main dot that you're going to apply to somebody. You need this to be on the target to actually do your sabotage. Then you also have the option to get critical hit chance increased by targets affected by your shock charge. This is also another nice one. If your critical hit chance is kind of low, my critical hit chance is what, 42%, so there's really no reason for me to even bother. It's 40%, so there's really no reason for me to bother with that. However, if you're suffering crit wise, it can be actually pretty good to pick up. And then this one is more of like a PvE thing, but even then I just don't find value in this, so I wouldn't even bother. Then critical hit damage is increased by 20%. This is really nice. So what that means is it's not just a like it says that and it's hidden. It actually shows up here. So you're at 88% critical multiplier. So basically like surge. Actually a huge damage increase sometimes when you crit. But when you have percentage increases, it really goes out of control. So much so that this is probably one of the issues. This one and this one are like probably part of the reason why with this tactical, why it's so broken. Then you can also take illegal mods. Illegal mods is pretty nice, but I personally just don't find a room for it. And sometimes it can be good, but overall, really, it's already overkill. So really just depending on whether you want to reset for your target hack or not, then also having the attack accuracy is very nice. This is a minute 30 seconds cooldown, so it's really not a bad choice. However, I just use this one. And whenever you get a kill, obviously it will reset your target hack. So that's mainly part of the reason why I take it. Then you have this one. This one's more of like an AoE thing, so I don't even bother with that. However, like a lot of the choices for engineering is actually really good. Don't get me wrong. When it comes to this one, you're pretty much always taking this one. You can take this one against range. This one's actually really, really good against range. And then this one's kind of like a meme. Mainly you're looking for extra hunker down. Basically that's your entrench, cover heal, your hollow okay, or you can take your bubble, and then heads up. I like heads up. Sometimes hotwire defenses can be very, very good defensively. However, I just prefer that one, so I go that one. Same thing goes for Virulence. It's kind of like the same loadout that I run. Anyway, let's kind of get into the complications of this class and probably why most players will not bother with this class or won't understand it. So for example, give me 1 second and I'll show you. Right, sorry, now I'm back. I had to grab a drink. So let's start off with something basic. If I use this ability, this target becomes marked. And basically what this means is that it takes more damage from ranged attacks. So this is a 5% damage increase. Just having this on the target at least once to mark it, you will do more damage. So remember, your vital shot is very important, even though rotationally it's not completely mandatory because you only need to use it to refresh this. 5% extra damage is really good. So for example, if I use this dot, this is your main dot that you always want to apply. This is also a slow. Does not apply what you need. You throw this down, it's another slow, or at least while we're in it. Does not apply marked, it applies mental, overwhelmed, mental. So it's area attacks increase, so that's not the one that you're looking for. Then let's say we just do this, we do this, and we explode it. This is kind of like your main burst window right there. Now that is a very weak version of it. That is like your main burst window. Did that apply? It didn't. So you need to understand that vital shot is going to be very important to actually increase your burst damage, because that extra 5% damage on top of all the amplifications that you already have is a tremendous amount of damage increase. So let's get into it. This will also increase the critical hit chance of explosive charge by 100%, basically making it a super crit. What a super crit is basically any of the extra critical dips into critical multiplier, and a critical multiplier is already extremely high, so it's going to go crazy. So let's do just a simple loop. As soon as I crouch, it's going to probably give me my relic box, so I'm going to do this a little bit awkwardly. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my probe charge. Do this, and then I'm going to use my speed shot. Pop target hack, pop that, and then throw my grenade. So for that, it doesn't look like I did a lot of damage, but in reality, I did a ton. A lot of numbers just happened, and to give you a quick rundown, I want to open up start bars. I'm going to tell you exactly how hard I just hit. Normally you can see it pretty well, especially in PvP, because you can see their health directly going down, but give me 1 second here. Ability, my explosive charge hit 160k there, followed by my sabotage hitting at 66k. That is a lower end burst window, but sabotage and explosive charge go all at the same time. So that means that I was hitting 160k plus another 66k at the same game tick. It doesn't include the shock charge, which is the dot, and any other dots that we're ticking at the same time. So, for example, since we have all of our cooldowns back, I'm going to go ahead and do it again. So we're going to go ahead and throw this, apply our dot, apply our other dots, and pop that early. So that's a 131k and 71k. So the main reason why you use Speed Shot, by the way, is to proc your Sabotage. Your Sabotage will actually do more when it's actually procced. When you don't have a proc for it, it will still be good. It just won't, it's like a guaranteed crit. I can't remember what the proc passive is, but we'll figure that out in just a second. Just give me a second actually, and I'll just explain this a little bit better. Okay, I'm back. Really, it seems like the only thing that it does is make it AoE. Which is still a win. Obviously, that's going to do a lot more damage, but for the most part, it's not always mandatory that you need to do that. Mainly just looking at getting your main 2 dots like that. And then this will be your main burst. So we'll just go ahead and use that so we can get the procs. We get both of our relic procs and immediately go into it. That time we had 174k. So the main reason would be to get this version of Sabotage to go AoE if you use your blazing, or not blazing, but your Speed Shot. On top of that, it's also going to take the dots and do the passive. So this is going to be like one of your highest hitting abilities in general, or highest damaging abilities, Speed Shot. When you have your dots on the target, it's just going to be that much better. You're going to shred people with just that ability alone, and then you have the burst window here with these 2 abilities. Obviously, there is travel time when it's supposed to charge, so you don't want to Sabotage immediately. As you can see, we get our dots going, and we pop Sabotage. Outside of that, you really just want to use Speed Shot, so you can make sure that you can align it with your relic procs, which you'll see them right here. Depending on like what your setup is, it'll be a little bit different. You get the general ideal. That's kind of like the burst window. And when it comes to AoE, that's when the class really gets complicated. So the way to think of it is, this is one of your AoEs that you can just play. Not play, but you can lay down and kind of forget about it. It's just an area denial ability, and you can also use it on you, around you, to create area denial of people trying to hit you. So if they want to come and hit you in their melee, they're going to get slowed. And it can CC. So for example, if you have shock charge on somebody, and then they also are in this, and then you use Sabotage, it will CC them. If they're in crouch too, it's kind of nice as against like range, just really in general against other snipers. It's really nice, and then you can go into Speed Shot, and just guarantee hit all of your Speed Shot, which is really nice. Engineering in general is just really good into other snipers. It's probably the best class to play when dealing with other snipers, especially Marksman. But overall, in general, you're looking at not really using this as much as you can. This is very energy consuming and will cause you to run out of energy really fast. Auto attack is your main filler when you're running out of energy or your energy is getting too low, so do keep in mind that you should be using that. And then also this is kind of energy positive to use when it comes to AoE. That's another ability that's not too bad. You can use this as an aerial denial ability too, so do think about using it on like the Void Side door. Other than that, I'll give you another quick example of like kind of like how this goes. And that's pretty much it. Obviously you can throw thermal afterwards, but for the most part that's kind of just how it goes. And there I hit 176k. You can hit harder on this, by the way. Then I also hit a 36k Sabotage. That's on the low end. That was not a crit. So that's still over a 200k. And then my shock charge is obviously ticking for 11k every single tick. So you're easily hitting over 200k pretty much every single time that you have target hack and this combo up. And on the high end of critical hits, you're looking at like 180k. And then you're looking at like 80k with Sabotage. That ends up being a lot of freaking damage, up to like 250k. You can get that off on somebody, it's a absolute nightmare for them. And for the most part, defensively, trying to think of your defensive kit all at the same time, since it is the same as Virulence, except for you don't have the damage reduction on defense screen, it becomes a little bit more complicated. You do have an AoE slow that you can kind of use in your advantage, but for the most part, it is a little bit more difficult to survive. But you do have the advantage of being able to roll, and while you're rolling, you actually root people, so against melee, it's very good. Its range, it's still like not too great, but not terrible. it has the burst, and that's the main reason why it's so good right now. Now let's move on to the next class, which will be Arsenal. Alright, so we're back again. And on this character, I don't have the perfect setup just yet, but soon I will. 4600 is the critical DR for Arsenal. You don't really care about going more than that. You can go a bit less. And as low as like 3300. Not really 30, about 3600 is the lowest you really want to go. And then you'll start really seeing like damage going down. Alacrity, we're only running 1100. It's kind of like the same thing that I would run on Carnage, as they both have the same alacrity windows. However, we're just running this because I don't find value in high alacrity on this spec at all. I find accuracy to be way more useful. And I don't know if you guys hear that in the background. My roommate is laughing like a hyena. But it gets me every time. But for the most part, we're just running this because this is, you know, alacrity. We already hit threshold. We don't need more alacrity. Accuracy, we're getting 5%. It's heavy white damage spec. You can go more accuracy if you want to. We're running stimulated with the auto crit tactical. So basically these two are mandatory. You don't really need stimulated, but I would say it's the most damage increase that you could possibly get. Alternatively, you do have the option to get the one that give you extra supercharge every 15 seconds. This one is actually really good. The problem is this one's more reliant on uptime. So if there's any time where uptime is an issue, like you're killing people too fast, or you're just not fighting for very long, this tactical, or not tactical, this implant gains more value on more uptime there is. And if there's less uptime, this is just not very good. So in situations where uptime is not amazing, Stimulated is always going to pull ahead. So that's why I use that. This is also just not a class that I play as much anymore, but it does. It's fun times. It is relatively simple. And let's get into kind of like outside of our stats, we have tacticals. We've got the implants already covered. These are the tacticals that I use. I don't really bother with any other ones, mostly just because I don't play this class that much anymore. However, I do know how to play it. I like Burning Bright. I like hitting big numbers. Very fun. Prime Ignition is a sustained DPS tactical, and again, obviously I feel like this class is just not something that thrives in sustained DPS right now. Its PvE parsing is not very good either. One of the weaker classes, just like Marksmanship, and you know, it being heavily reliant on white damage. I really just don't feel like it's worthwhile to invest into trying to sustain damage in PvP. You're much better to put all your chips into burst and try to capitalize on that. So immediately getting into this, talents are incredibly important. This class is easy. That's why it's ranked so high right now on my list. Very, very easy to play, and it's solid for the effort that you put in. Otherwise, it would potentially be lower because it's not a great class at the moment, but it's not a terrible one, and it's incredibly easy, so it gets to have a little bit higher ranking. The first thing we're going to start off with this is the main talent that you need if you're going to use the Burning Bright and you're going for the burst build. This is what I highly recommend. Otherwise, you're going to run with the one that reduces the cooldown of your tracer just by a little bit, or your channel time. Other than that, I would say that this one is probably kind of troll, but it could be pretty good too. But in general, I just don't bother because I find this one just to be so much better. Then we're taking the basic damage reduction. It does seem like 2% times 3, you know, stacks last for 15 seconds. It doesn't seem like that's crazy, but if you ever use your med scan or your tracer, it'll apply the stacks again, so that means you'll be able to maintain 6% damage reduction just by playing the game. As a heavy armor class, having extra damage reduction is going to be very vital. So right now you only have 26% damage reduction. That's not terrible, but having the extra damage reduction, so here we are at max stacks, we're at 32%. That's quite a bit, right? And then you're going to have your shield a lot, so when you pop your shield you have 57%. Otherwise, you'd have 57 or 51%. I think it's worthwhile. It's debatable for some people. If you don't find yourself being as active, then maybe it's not as useful, but I think the extra damage reduction is invaluable. And I prefer it over the other options. Also, do keep in mind, this is also damage reduction for internal, and Elemental, which is one of the damage types that absolutely shreds you. So for example, like Virulence and Pyro, including Annihilation. So just do keep that in mind. It has a lot of value. I know a lot of people don't take it, but honestly, it's really worth it. And Sticky Dirt is kind of nice. Like if you know that somebody's going to stealth out, you can use this and it'll like persist. And then on top of that, it does do a slow. That's pretty strong. However, there's a lot of ways to purge those slows. Then this one will give you damage reduction while you're stunned. That's great, but honestly, if you're getting stunned, you should have already reacted with Energy Shield. And if you're bad at reacting, then by all means this can be good, but you're wasting a global cooldown, and I just don't find the value on this unless you're playing healer. So most of the time, probably don't bother with this. You'll just have better outcome by already having Power Barrier. 6% damage reduction versus 30%, obviously is not comparable, but this one only works when you're stunned, and chances are, with the ability to run the Reflect, if you need to run it, will be more valuable than taking this and wasting GCDs constantly on it. Because your sustained damage already lacks, and you don't want to make it worse. Now going into this is AoE Heat Screw. The only reason I'm even selected into it right now is because I was trying it out, and it's fun to play. And fun to play on a spec that's already not doing too great is kind of like more value. However, I would recommend going the critical hit chance and critical hit damage of Heat Seekers by 10% as the correct choice for more bursts. However, this one can be kind of fun if you're looking for like AoE, doing a little bit more AoE. However, don't rely on this because it's actually really not good, like at all. It's probably terrible. And if we had auto crit Heat Seeker back, this still wouldn't be that great because it is reduced damage. The quarter strength, 25%. That's not great. Anyway, moving on from that, you'll be looking at probably Chaff Flare. I don't really understand why I'm expecting to that. Pretty much always Chaff Flare, whatever. Pretty much always expecting to that, and the main reason is because of its ability to soak damage. So whenever we pop this, we get two abilities that we can kind of absorb if they're force or attack. It's pretty nice, so if you're able to time them well, you can absorb some damage with that. On IO, it's a little bit more important. You can run this one though, it's not terrible. For the most part, Chaff Flare is definitely the move to go with, because that'll be your first line of defense. And going into this one, you virtually don't have a choice. You're pretty much always going Energy Rebounder. If you're never running Energy Rebounder, you're kind of throwing, because this is the main talent that makes Arsenal like good. And it's the main reason IO is better than what it would be. IO didn't used to have access to this, and when it didn't have access to this, Arsenal was the clear winner. But now that IO also has access to this, they are, I would say, on par, but I would say IO has the lead because it has better damage. But yeah, this is a mandatory option. Don't even bother with the other two. And then going into Cultist Surge, this one's really good. The Power Shield can also be really good too, especially if you're playing healer or have a healer. Then this one you pretty much never run. That extra alacrity doesn't actually matter at all to you. Alacrity seems like it would be very useful, but for the most part it's not actually that useful. And overall, just losing out on either of these is just too harsh to lose out on. So I highly recommend Cultist Surge if you're playing with a healer. Power Shield can be really good, but just remember that you're losing a defensive. Culto is really bad without Cultist Surge. Then this one is also kind of like preference. If you're not really worried about having to escape or like reposition, like if you're not good at positioning, Chet Out is amazing. If you want to play more aggressively and then reposition with Chet Out, definitely take this one. However, if you're really safe with your positioning, or you understand that not to overextend and you always have somebody that will probably be ahead of you or more important than you to hit, then running Responsive Safeguard is pretty good. So if they do swap to you, you have Reflect, you're fine. They'll pretty much swap off you and you'll be okay. However, I I recommend probably learning responsive safeguards, and then once you get more experienced and you understand your positioning a little bit more and like when you're going to get hit, when there's no more frontline, jet out / rocket out is definitely something to pick up. Then this is your bread and butter right here, trauma regular. So basically every time you take damage when you have energy shield up, which you have energy shield up all the time, pretty much whenever you're being attacked, you'll get a heal when it collapses, and that will help a lot for your survival. If you're not taking it, you're kind of throwing. The only reason you would ever swap out of this is if you know that you're going to get guard and you're going to have heals. Then you can kind of like run this because this helps your heat a lot, and you're able to abuse things like vents for the extra 10% damage, or if you get CC'd, you can kind of like line it up with your priming shot, so on and so forth. However, for the most part, it's not something that you can really afford. The main class that, or main version of Mercenary that can really run this one is Bodyguard, and they do have to be babysat a little bit more when they run this. However, this talent alone is just, it's your bread and butter. It's arguably so overpowered that it probably never should have made it to the game, and this should have been damage reduction. But I digress. Healing defenses should have been something only Juggernaut had, but here we are. We are 3 expansions, or no, it's 2 expansions now since this happened. Technically 3 whole expansions that they've had this. Don't agree with the class design. That's part of the reason why I don't really play it as much anymore. And then when you regen, you'll get 10 stacks. These 10 stacks are your basically damage window or burst window, so you want to line it up. We'll also give you an auto crit. So basically what happens here is that we're just going to tracer until we get a proc. So now that we have a proc, you understand when this is glowing, this is when your rail shot will do the maximum damage from this. You want to have Tracer on the target because it applies a debuff. Then once you have both of these, I'll show you what the icon is for Blazing Bolts. Once this is 4 stacks right here, we have the proc for priming shot. So your priming shot can do the maximum damage. So we've got Tracer lock and our target lock. Well, actually, it's Tracer lock and Blazing Bolt one. So this is like kind of like when your burst window would be. Your burst abilities will be priming shot, heat seeker, rail shot. Now that's pretty lackluster because we're not actually doing a rotation, but this is kind of like the general flow. Tracer to reset your blazing bolts, use your blazing bolts, your main damage source. And then when you're waiting for high velocity gas to come back up, you can use your abilities out of sync for damage. It's not a bad idea to do. You don't always want to save your burst abilities for this, but if you do, you see I had 122k, failed to crit my heat seeker, but I had a decent rail shot too. It can be a lot of damage in that burst window, especially if you're able to get your relic procs plus this proc. Basically what that means is that when I have that proc up, my critical multiplier is increased, and we got stats here, so you kind of like see like what's happening when it drops. So for example, let me just click it off. See, we're at 67. We get 10% critical hit multiplier during that window. And I am so sorry, I just hit my mic. Not good. I will, I can remember, I'll try to edit that out. Sorry for your ears. Alright, anyway. Normally what you'll do is pop your gas to get your alacrity stacks for that, and then you'll keep going. Priming shot right before that falls off. It's this, it's that. That'd be pretty good if my priming shot actually hit something there, but you kind of get the gist of it. You're kind of just tracering into blazing bolts. You have max stacks, which is kind of hard to not have due to how it works. Priming shot, heat seeker, rail shot. These abilities still do good damage without high velocity. However, if you're going for like your big burst window, you want to have that. And when your priming shot actually crits with your other abilities, it is a massive amount of damage. Anyway, that's pretty much it for Arsenal. Arsenal is pretty straightforward. And we'll catch you again on the next class. Let's go ahead and check which one that one is. That will be Vengeance. Okay. Alright, moving on to the next class, Vengeance. We'll say you can drop down to 4200 critical in this class. I just go this amount of critical because one, it's easier, two, I don't have the augments to swap to mastery, though if I really wanted to, I could use the 300 golds that I used to have. However, I mean, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Critical is very important. As a Vengeance Juggernaut, you're looking to maximize your critical, so it's not necessarily going to waste. When it comes to tactical or tactical spit implants, I pretty much always recommend Second Wind. The value that you get from Second Wind is crazy. You don't have to personally kill the person yourself, so through AoE taunts, through interceding, through taunting, outside of just regular AoE taunts, and just doing dot damage, AoE damage, stuff like that, will all give you an extra chance of getting Second Wind proccing. So if anybody dies and you just had to have happened to have contributed in any sort of way, it'll proc. So if you like living, Second Wind is the way to go. If you don't really care about living, Fearless Victor or Stimulated Package can also be very good. However, I pretty much always recommend Second Wind. It's only different on Rage that you sometimes would drop this. However, I feel like this is just a core vital part of Vengeance at this point. In Arena, it's a little bit different, but for the most part, there it can be useful. And then we have Champion's Precision. It basically increases your critical hit chance after you pop in Rage, which is really important. This will allow you to have more healing, not more healing, but more critical in your like slime spam windows. And this tactical, if you don't know what it already does, there's a couple of clips that I have on my channel like showcasing. So you can slam just like that every single global cooldown. Leave situations, and it's probably the only spec in game to successfully go into like a 3v8 and actually walk away from it. So do keep that in mind. Even like a lot of my older Vengeance videos, you see me going into the enemy node and just fighting the entire team all by myself, and I'm completely content. I have no issues with it. I am enjoying myself. I am actually killing multiple people before I even die. Very enjoyable. However, players are a little bit smarter now, so you can't really get away with it like you used to. This was a tactical last expansion, and even then it was pretty good. I ended up doing like 50k DPS last expansion with this, and it seems to be one of my favorite classes in the entire game. Vengeance was really fun. However, they've moved away from Ravage doing damage and kind of like Impel. Impel doesn't have an auto crit anymore. Ravage doesn't really do any damage. Pretty much everything's centered around Slam now. I don't really like that playstyle, so I've moved away from it. And like I would say early 6.0. 5.0 was the last time that I really enjoyed it. And Rage, Jug, and Immortal are, I guess, defense, because I play a lot of Guardian on this character, because it's both this character. Kind of get the ideal. We have our stats, we have our tacticals, and our implants. Let's go into our talents. So this is what I run. There are plenty of times where you can go Pulled Hatred. Honestly, I just run through Passion because I just feel like most of the time surviving a little bit longer is going to get me more slams, which is going to give me infinitely more value than Pulled Hatred. However, Pulled Hatred can be very good sometimes. If you're surviving, Pulled Hatred is the way to go. If you're not surviving, having Enraged defense uptime is just better. It's 1 minute and 30 seconds. That means like every other time that I die, I'll be able to have it. If I'm just completely turbo-enting into their team at least. And then Mad Dash, I think Mad Dash is just invaluable because it'll allow you to get out of a lot of routes, close the gap, and get a re-leap if you need to. And then we have Warmonger, basically damage reduction on leap, and also immunity on leap, very important. This one basically just lowers the cooldown of your leap, and pretty much mandatory. I wouldn't recommend either of these other ones. There is something fun that you could try with this one, but for the most part, just recommend Warmonger. The other talents here, rarely do you ever use Reflect. Sometimes Reflect can be really good if there's a lot of burst damage just coming out and you don't find yourself in need of having Mad Dash to re-leap and stuff like that. Reflect is a good defensive to have, and taking it is really nice. Back in the day, Reflect used to be damage capped. Now it's not. at least it's not as capped as low as it was. So normally you would have reflect and it wouldn't really do much. You know, like operative has 150% reflect. Like that's silly. Mercenary has a reflect. This class used to be the only class in the game with a reflect. Its damage was capped because it was quite strong. Now that's not the case anymore. Seeing the reflect more damage now is a win, but we still have to spec into it, even though in theory I honestly feel like this is the only class that should have a reflect, and I also feel like this is the only only class that should have self-healing defensives. And I will take that to the grave. Juggernaut is no longer a Juggernaut because other classes have self-healing defensives, and they just do it better than Juggernaut because Juggernaut doesn't have the same kind of damage reduction available to them like Energy Shield. Anyway, moving on from this, we're going to start from the bottom up since we've got the main class ones already done. We're taking the increased damage while Shatter is on the target, so it's an increased hit chance of your bleeds on your target. And this also applies to everybody, so if you're hitting a Shatter into Slam, everybody now has Shatter on them. Pretty much everybody that gets the other dots, so from Force Scream or Impel, will also have a 10% increased critical hit chance, which is very important because it'll allow you to proc your cut to pieces a lot more often. Increasing the initial damage of Shatter is just not worth it. It's very like minimal. And then this one is just a PvE thing, don't even bother. I don't find value in Ravage 90% of the time. Even with the tactical to increase the damage of Ravage and refreshing your dots, I still don't find the value. Ravage has been completely gutted, and I refuse to play that playstyle because that's how it used to play. And when it used to play like that, it actually did damage. Now it's like the damage is laughable. Like you're kind of grieving yourself. You should just be playing Slam Spam. And then I run this one because of the AoE Scream. Scream is one of your dots. So having the AoE slow on it and then also having AoE in general means that you're getting your AoE spread for your Scream without having to slam. This means that your Slam Spam can be a little bit more effective. And then moving into the next one, this basically increases the critical hit chance of Impel. Impel is an ability that is your single target ability. It's very important. It used to be your auto crit and it was your main source of damage outside of Hue, which is your dispatch. Right, it's a vicious throw. That is very good. So having that just to have better single target damage is why I take that. Otherwise you can take well, you don't really care about this one. This is what I'm talking about. Basically this is like an extra leap and immobilizes them. This one's really cool, but the problem is it's really buggy. And it works like driving core, but a little bit more buggy. If you don't like the movement effect on this, I would recommend dropping it and just running this one, because it will be a little bit better. And then having the additional critical bleed, it's pretty nice. Then we go into the most important thing to make this work, is that we're running Bloodbound. This basically increases your healing, I guess you could say. It looks a lot more complicated than it is. So basically just think of it as like, when you're doing AoE, you get a lot of dots on people. If you have a lot of dots on them, and you hit Enrage, Blood Enrage, or whatever, you will heal for pretty much 20% of your health. So that also scales up Endure Pain. This is why second one is so good. So whenever you pop Endure Pain, you could heal for 20% off of Blood Rage, and then on top of that, you get the 20% critical from your set bonus implant. And then on top of that, if you get your second one proc during the Endure, you get extra percentage of health, which is really nice. So your healing can really pop off. And then with that, you also have, where is it? The cooldown reduction every time that a bleed effect critically hits, which also ties into your Slam Spam, to have it up more often. So you'll be able to spam that ability all the time in Cleave, allowing you to get heals constantly and also getting your critical hit chance back up. Alternatively, you can take this one. Gives it a lot longer cooldown, but if you ever reset combat, you get it back for free. This also increases your bleed crit hit chance by 50%. This means you're able to Slam Spam almost guaranteed. And it can be very good, but most of the time I just find the healing one to be that much better. Now to give you an example of like what it's like We're going to go ahead and get 2 stacks so our 4 scream gets a free 100% crit. This is kind of like what your opener would be. Ice Saber Throw into Sundering, just at max rage. We do the Scream for the AoE, Slam into Shatter, and then Slam again. Do Hew, Scream, Impel, Slam again. We do Ravage, Thunder into Slam, Shatter, Scream, Impel, Ravage. Or we can use Slam, which most of the time will be your best bet. It's just Slam. So every time you have all your dots on your target, your cooldown reduction for your Slam should be going pretty crazy, and you'll be able to Slam quite often. That's your main source of damage. Obviously, let's say you're in a situation where you don't have much time to live. Getting a Shatter into Slam, and then AoE Scream. This is AoE cone behind them, so you want to try to aim that into Impel, and then Slam again. Then you've got all 3 dots, and you spread all 3 of them. That's kind of like how you want to do that. However, it's only if you know that you're not going to live, because if you know you're going to live, you might as well get your Sunder off, AoE Scream, Impel, Slam, spread those, Shatter, Hew or Ravage, up to you, Scream, Impel. Like you can do these single target abilities and Slam, but obviously when you have all 3 dots, that's really when you want to start slamming, but it's really just on whether there's AoE or not. Whenever there's AoE, I do think it's 100% worth slamming over using any of your other abilities, but if there's not AoE, it's kind of like follow your priority. So in terms of like raw hit damage, you're looking at Impel, Scream, Hew, Slam, Ravage. Those are like kind of like the abilities that will do the most damage. You're kind of looking at that the whole time. And then if you don't build your stacks, you can just go into Impel. You always want to use Impel as your single target damage builder. Not builder, but you know, kind of like a the ideal. That would be your go-to. You want to have it on cooldown all the time for your single target damage, because if you're going to use a single target ability, that's the single target ability to use outside of Hew. For the most part, Slam is what you're focused on. Every time you pop Blood Rage, you want to make sure that you're tying it with dot spreads. So as soon as you have dot spreads already gone out, then pop it, you get the most value out of it. Then also just when it comes to trying to prioritize, when you have a Slam window, prioritize your Shatter, and then prioritize your Impel last. So you'll be doing Shatter, Scream, Impel. However, it'd be like Shatter, Slam, Scream, Slam, Impel, Slam. And if at any point it can just be Slam, 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 Slam. And then as things are about to fall off, if you're looking at your enemy debuffs, pop one of these again, and then Slam, 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 so on and so forth. And pop this on cooldown while you're Slam spamming. This will give you a healing and critical hit chance. That's pretty much it for Vengeance. Vengeance is pretty straightforward. It has a lot of utility to like control people. So you have the battle root people to have immunity during your leap. And then you also have Force Push, which is pretty nice. It rubber bands a lot of time on people, so if they don't know how to play against it properly, they will probably waste something on it. Choke is a free hard stun. You don't have to spec into it. It's kind of nice. This class is going to be completely gutted. It's going to miss a lot of its defenses, but they went back on that because people gave a lot of backlash. If only Marauder got the same treatment, that would be great. Other than that, highly recommend this class. This is very easy to play, very fun to play if you're looking for a melee that has infinite AoE. This is the one to choose. Other than that, let's go ahead and move to the next one, which is Innovative Ordnance. Okay. Alright, we're back on this class. This one is Innovative Ordnance. It does have some similarities to Advanced Prototype. Normally, I don't really play this class too much, but when I do play this class, this is the class that, or not class, but spec I prefer to play now. Personal is fun, but this one, in my opinion, is a lot more fun. So there's a main difference with Chaff Flare on this class, or this spec. It gives you a defense chance when you pop it, which is really nice. Also, intercepts the attack for force and attack. It just makes Chaff Flare a lot better on IO than Personal in comparison. So that's one of the main reasons why IO is doing better. It's also doing better defensively. Energy Rebounder is also thing. Then you also have power barrier still. Outside of that, we're going to look at our stats. You can 100% run 5% accuracy. It's totally worthwhile to do so. However, I'm just not running it right now. However, I do think it's very much so worthwhile. So if you are looking to build this class, dropping some critical, picking up some accuracy, 100% worthwhile. As you see, I have 45% crit hit chance. That's pretty crazy for range. But my tech crit hit chance is only 40%. So it does mean that my yellow damage is only hitting 40% of the time, critical hit chance, and then my white damage will be 45%. Other than that, this is kind of like the stats that I'm running. I'm running Stimulated and I'm running Auto Crit. It's 100% worthwhile to run the overcharged sales package over Stimulated. However, I just don't messing with that, and this is also again an uptime issue. If you're not able to get the uptime, I don't really find this one to be as useful. So most of the time I will run Stimulated over it. And going into our talents, we're pretty much running the same thing when it comes to Mercenary as a whole. Same thing right here. These are all the same. It's mainly just the options for damage. So we have an ability to Missile Blast as a increased damage. Rock through this. This is really good. Volatile Warhead is a high damage ability. And it also helps build your stacks for your supercharged gas. You have the option to turn your thermal damage into kinetic damage, and no longer does elemental damage. I pretty much almost never recommend this, and the main reason why is because the elemental damage is going to be a lot harder to mitigate versus kinetic damage. So I highly recommend just taking this at all. And then you also have the one that will give you more damage, and then it's even more, it's just periodic damage, so it's just dot damage increase. This is like okay. For the most part, I feel like this one is like you're kind of like pigeonholed into this one. This one's actually really good, and I think it's really fun to play with too. So normally I would go with that one. This one's also pretty good to run, and this one's like okay. For the most part, this is like your other AoE. If you wanted to focus more on AoE, this one's pretty good. Other than that, that is IO. It is more complicated, and that's why it's ranking so low, even though it's pretty good. But basically, quickly run over this. This is one of your main dots. So just like Pyro, that's your incendiary missile, your main dot from range. And then this will be your main channel dot. This is white damage, so you have to roll on the accuracy roll to actually apply it. It's kind of hard for you to pay attention on whether it actually landed or not because the icon does not match this icon. It looks like Vital Shot. It also doesn't really hit very hard when you actually apply it, so did you even land it and you didn't even see it? Do we even know if it was there? I don't like that. I really wish that they would change it, make the animation a little bit better, or make it hit a little bit harder, or I don't know, make it a little bit more useful and fuse it into something else. But it's your main dot, and then it's your other main dot. With those two dots on the target, that's your primary goal. And then outside of that, you have supercharged gas. So when you have supercharged gas maxed out, auto attacking a bajillion times, which auto attack also applies to dot 2. So you can do some extra damage there. Auto attack is actually very high on your priority list sometimes when you're going into heat management issues. Just like on AP, you still auto attack. So your auto attack actually has amplified damage on this spec, at least in comparison, so that's very helpful. So, give you a quick example of what we're doing. We'll go ahead and open with this, do this, do that. For the most part, just like, we call it Virulence, you're not finding yourself in a situation where you're going to be using your unload / blazing shot, or whatever you can call it. Was it speed shot or something in that class? You're not going to find yourself using unload as much. It's going to be very hungry for heat, and that's going to cause issues with your heat management. So try not to overuse it too much. That's the easy way to say, oh, that'll give me damage, it'll be channeled, I won't have to think about GC for a little bit. Try not to do that, because that will definitely hurt your heat management. The main thing that you're going to be looking at is getting procs for Missile Blast to help you get your supercharged gas. When you get your supercharged gas, it'll help you vent heat. So again, we're putting our dots on the target. Thermal into our supercharged gas. Power shot, mag blast again. We'll use our Missile Blast, and then we can use an unload here. Then we go back into a power shot. And in this situation, we are going to be looking to reapply our dots once again. But for the most part, it's really just thermal, mag shot, warhead. Those are the main abilities that you're looking at, and using your power shot as your main filler. Now, if you're running the other tactical, I mean implant, you're going to be getting your supercharged gas way more often, and that's where it's going to pull ahead, and it's going to start pulling ahead really fast when you actually have uptime where people are surviving. So, unless you're pretty experienced, I don't recommend running Stimulated, and I would recommend running this one. And I'm going to mess up our stats just to show that real quick. So, serrated, your main dot. That one's your other one. I'm going to go thermal, into mag blasts. It's that, and then we can also throw a net. Probably should have done it sooner. Into unload, missile blast. And reuse our thermal. We need to reapply dots. Go ahead and use our gas. Gonna get the ideal for the most part. And during your gas, your bite damage is going to apply a dot. It's going to increase your damage. But for the most part, really just think of it as when you can't use power shot, use your rapid shots. You want to have your dots on your target, but don't always goof yourself heat management wise to keep your dots on the target. Mag shot will be, when procced, a net positive for your heat management. You can use your sweeping blasters to get a proc, so let's just give you an example of that real quick. So let's just say we throw our thermal, pop it with our mag blast or mag shot, right? We'll have it over here, and this can be procced again. We're just going to go ahead and sweeping, so you can immediately reproc that without having to really use any heats. There are some situations that you'll actually want to do that, so just do keep in mind that you can actually do that. And that's kind of like IO. Rotationally, it's going to be very difficult to learn at first, but just like a real shot for AP, you're kind of like working on reprocking that all the time. And then when it comes to filler, unload is where you're going to have most of the heat problems. You have to use your rapid shots. The power shot's going to be your main filler. Other than that, let's go ahead and go to the next class because we are already over 2 hours. Alright, and we're back. Time, we're going to go over hatred and we're on deception. So just let me fix that real quick. Ignore my loadout names. Alright, so now we are set right. Let's go ahead and pop our tactical. Normally the tactical's down at the bottom. So the critical DR for hatred is around 4850. Not perfectly, but that just because it's easy to constantly swap between this is about 4850. I'm pretty sure is DR for both of them. But we're pretty much at it with this setup, and this is probably like the most max that you could probably get. And then obviously running stimulated is an option, so they put you like 18.4 mastery. That's pretty good. Damage. However, the value from this movement speed from second wind alone is 100% worthwhile. The main reason I take it is because of that. And then the increased healing is also just great to have. So your self-healing is okay, but with second wind it becomes a lot better. So that's the main reason why I run that. There are other tacticals that you can take. There's a 3% force and melee damage, I think, like increase implant. That's pretty good. And that one to be pretty good, but I think stimulated is probably better. Then you also have, say there's like another one, but blanking on the ideal. I don't recommend that one either, however. So you're usually looking for second wind and Shadowcraft. The main reason why I recommend Shadowcraft is because it will reset your force cloak. Or I mean not your force cloak, but your Phantom Stride on your force cloak. That allows you to have more mobility and more gap closers. And it also means that when you have fam stride from stealth, you have a 100% crit window for 6 seconds. This is part of like what makes it work so well and what makes it so lethal in AoE cleave, but also gives it some pretty good single target burst. Whereas Assassinate auto crit going away definitely lowered its single target burst, and with the Leeching Strike kind of existing and still existing, for some reason they didn't prune it. It really just makes Hatred wonky. Hatred was a very cool spec in my opinion, and when they added Leeching Strike, it became less so cool because Leeching Strike doesn't make any sense. It's a single target ability, it uses a lot of force, and it doesn't hit very hard. And even if you take the tactical to spam it, it's like okay, but it's completely against the class identity. It's meant to be a AoE spec, and when you're spamming something that's single target like that, it just doesn't make thematically any sense. Now let's go into our other two tacticals. There we go. So we have a Severance Pay. The only reason you would ever run this is if you're more experienced on Hatred and you're not running 2 cloaks, or you just don't want to run 2 cloaks. It's totally fine. Very much so only recommend this if you're experienced. The main reason why you would even do that is that when you have force speed up, you apply slow to everybody around you, and you're going to be tying it with Death Field because that's the only thing that it works with. Make your Death Field do a little bit more damage, and then doing this while you're also in the 100% crit window, this allows your Death Fields to hit up to like 80,000. It's pretty good, and it's AoE internal damage, so it'll absolutely shred. However, overall, it's kind of mid, and if you have a class like Engineering or PT Tank that has the slows just built into their abilities, and they're actually using them, or expect into that, this gets a lot more value. But overall, this is just a fun tactical to use for extra burst damage on AoE. This one is the sustained damage increase. So basically this makes your creeping terror take additional time, and then on top of that, pretty much any time that you use Lacerate. So it's just basically increased damage. Other than that, we pretty much run 2 cloaks because it allows you to have more Shadowcraft openers and more Shadowcraft sets, and just enjoy stealth a little bit more. Even though you're not going to be in stealth for much. The only reason you use yourself is to get your fam stride for setting up your opener. That's pretty much it. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into our talents real quick. So why does this work? It's because of this talent right here, Deadly Field. So whenever you get a kill, you get a stack of Death Field. Whenever drop Recklessness, it also gives you a stack. So a new part of this spec is now every time you get like critical hits with your dots, you'll get cooldown reduction for Recklessness. So you get Recklessness a lot. That's why I have it double bounded, because sometimes my fingers will be all over. So hitting X is not as comfortable as R, and vice versa. So that is one of the main 4 fundamental parts of playing Hatred nowadays. These other talents I see a lot of people running. I don't find them useful. I find them comparable, and I don't find them anywhere near as good as Deadly Field. I understand their value, but I do think a lot of people that end up playing Hatred nowadays just aren't playing it right. I hate to say that, but it just really feels that way. And then we have Molspike. Sometimes I do find this actually useful. This is actually something that's not terrible. The only problem with this is that it's tied to Leeching Strike. I don't understand why they decided to do this. There was so many different opportunities for them to change it up and make it more cool, but they added it to freaking Leeching Strike. Leeching Strike, if you didn't know, you had to have all 3 dots on the target to get full value of Leeching Strike, and if you don't have that, it's basically a force negative ability and that doesn't really do much damage. So with that in mind, having a tied to Assassinate and make Assassinate usable, like if you're expecting to make Assassinate usable from stealth free, like they could have done that, that would have been so much better. It would have been a lot cooler, and it would be less force negative. Anyway, as you see, this is 25 versus 17, obviously it'd be better. Assassinate doesn't really do as much damage as it used to, but it would be a lot better than using Leeching Strike like that. Using Leeching Strike like that is very inefficient. I don't agree with it. Overload is also a very good option. Overload is an incredibly overpowered ability. It'll AoE knock people. It's a force thing, so if you're not a force cleanser, you can't really get rid of it. Or if you don't have purges, you can't really get rid of it. You kind of have to stand there for 5 seconds waiting for somebody to either do direct damage to you or an ability to like purge it. So when it's stacked, it's very good, and when it's actually used correctly, it's very good. However, I like this one because this increases my force speed by a little bit, but also applies a slow to everybody. And when I pop Force Cloak, it increases it by a second, and it just gives me more movement speed when I'm cloaking. Overall, I don't like that these two effects are tied to each other. I do think they need separated, but it's not the end of the world. The main reason why you would even take this is the extra second on your force speed. I find that to be the most valuable out of everything here. And I didn't mean to say increasing your force cloak duration. It's just an active. Sorry, I completely blanked on that. I realized that I said that afterwards when I'm talking about force speed, as I just re-mentioned. When it comes to these talents, I don't really find the other ones to be too useful because having your Eradicate in the 100% crit window is just so much better. On top of that, this damage does go through like reflex and whatnot because it is still considered a dot. So this gives you a way to surefire kill somebody through reflect. Don't really recommend the other ones, especially if you're learning the class. Don't even bother with the other ones. Highly recommend just going with this one. And then out of these options, I highly recommend going with the middle one because this will teach you how to play Hatred in a way that was more traditional to the old ways. And it will also give you a lot of force back, making it a lot easier for you to make mistakes and still get away with it. If you're not running this and you're running Overcharge Saber, you have to be more aware of using auto attack way more often. And on top of that, for the most part, you're losing some critical hit chance and is it critical hit damage too? Yeah, some critical hit damage. So your dots won't be as effective, but Overcharge Saber sometimes, especially in arenas, has more value. Then you also have this one. This one's really hard to make use of. This is not something I would recommend for new Hatred players ever. This is like part of the problem with a lot of people that are trying to play Hatred and they don't really understand what they're doing. This overcomplicates it. This one also overcomplicates it, and then running in either of these just overcomplicates it to the point that they usually just don't do any damage. And if they would just copy this and play it like kind of like a turbo, just AoE spec, even if they're doing a single target, they would have much better success. And then we're going into Fade. The main reason I even take this is just to have my cloak up more often. I don't find the CC immunity that useful because most of the time when I'm CC'd, I'm dead anyway. This class is very much so paper, so don't expect to survive if you want to play this class. You have basically Immersion, that's called Force Phase, Shroud, and then the reduced cooldown on your force speed, so your mobility is better. I think mobility is more important on Hatred because finessing with your movement is a lot more important than kind of like getting stuck and just killed. Now there is a case to definitely take the Shroud out, but I choose not to, just because when you do stuff out, it does purge things, but I kind of just commit to my death most of the time. That's just my playstyle. However, if you do want to stuff out and like survive, you need to be mindful. If somebody's going to do yellow damage AoE, you pop your Shroud while you're stuffing out. However, I just think the reduced cooldown on force speed is just too valuable here. And then you also have Reaper's Rush, so that's only really if you're killing people really fast, so don't even bother with that. At least for now, if you're still learning. These would be the ones that I recommend, and I wouldn't deviate it from new player perspective. Now, with most of that explained, I'm just going to showcase kind of how your opener would go. After you've done that, you would be able to basically immediately your dots out, lacerate them, stealth out, and do it again, of course, if you wanted to, but for the most part, that's not the perfect time to do it. So for example, let's say you have your dots out, you've been out of stealth, you just build up 2 stacks of that field because somebody died, and you're getting cooldown reduction for your recklessness as you're going. You're about to get your recklessness back, and decide, you know what, I'll stealth out, right? And then go back and Phantom Stride again. When you're basically in the Shadowcraft window, you have multiple dots on everybody, the 100% crit rate is going to go crazy. You're going to be able to follow Death Field, eradicate Death Field. And the CDR that you'll gain during the 100% crit window with all the dots on everybody is going to basically give you another Recklessness. So you're going to have to pay attention to popping your Recklessness quite often and quite fast, especially if you're hitting 8 players, to allow you to use more Death Fields. Obviously, when it comes to your dots, you're looking at what, like 16-ish seconds before you actually end up reapplying them. Eradicate no longer becomes a dot that you really have to worry about. It's just something that you would pop after you use Death Field, because Death Field will increase the damage of dots. And for the most part, you're playing around just reprocking your Eradicate over and over and over. And in any situation where you can do AoE, you're looking at getting Death Fields, getting your Death Field reset kills, and Recklessness resets. And burst windows are always going to be tied to your Phantom Stride when you're in stealth. So using your Force Cloak to reset and get that going is incredible. You usually never want to do something like this. This is horrible. Never do this. Please do not do this. This is so bad. Do not do that. So what you would do before you're about to stealth, let's say you're just about to stealth, you do this, get your lacerate off so you can get your spread off, make sure you get your spread off, and then you could like then run away just a little bit, stealth out, and then immediately Phantom Stride again, and then go into your burst window. You have your dots on everybody. Then once your Phantom Stride window is over, then lacerate again, make sure you get your re-up on your dots. And kind of like play around like that. Don't use your window on lacerate. Other than that, that's kind of how Hatred plays. It's very simple, but it's so squishy that a lot of players just don't have the mindset to deal with it, let alone understand how important movement is. So for example, when you're dotting people, you actually don't even need to be in line of sight. So you could do something like this. And in any situation where you're kind of like doing damage, if you're ever able to use line of sight, it's always worthwhile. However, when it comes to using your melee abilities, you need to be within 4 meters. Just do keep in mind, and there's some classes, or not classes, but some abilities that have longer animations than other ones. So for example, Leeching Strike has a pretty long animation, so you kind of like activate it, get it off, but you can actually already be moving away a lot longer, a lot sooner, right? You can start moving away. So you can like drag it out a lot further sometimes. Another ability that's like that is Ravage. So any of these longer animations, do know that you can kind of abuse that. Obviously, you'll still get hit back in the time window, but just think about trying to minimize how easy it is for players to hit you. This goes for every class in the game. Don't make it like super easy for you to get hit. And it's even more so important on this class if you're decently, I need to have my gear on me. If you're decently experienced on Hatred or not Hatred, but like in the game in general, you haven't really understand fundamentally the importance of kiting. Let's say you play range and you're not very good at kiting in range. Learn how to kite on a melee first. I highly recommend that, because then you'll learn the vital essentials of like kind of how to still do damage effectively, but also mitigate and make it really hard for people to target you and choose to hit you. Most of the time, people will take a lot of damage because they just make it incredibly easy for them to get hit. Like if I go out, I just drop down, I'm looking for a target, there's a guy that's already getting welled on, he's in the middle of everybody. I can just go ahead and send some damage on him and probably kill him, or I can go behind a wall where this guy is currently like weaving in and out, doing damage to the person. 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to bother with that guy behind the wall, because chances are he's probably going to immediately react with a stun or something, because he's probably not getting hit. So that is something to think about. Something that you should apply to every single class you play. And I believe the next class is Deception. So I'll check back in just a second. Let me swap over to Deception. Alright, we're back literally a couple seconds later. So what happens here is that we're still running the same stats. You can go accuracy, but most of the time it's just not worth it. Mainly because you have a chance to just reuse your maul. The main reason you would even take this if you're running like a Reaping Strike focused build. We're running our second wind yet again, and Shadowcraft. You still can run Stimulated or something else, but I honestly think the movement speed and healing is unmatched in this class. It really complements the way that this class plays. So I think second wind is honestly just something that you don't even bother taking off, regardless of the spec, unless you're playing darkness, and even then it can be useful in darkness. Then you have Shadowcraft again. Shadowcraft is very vital to your build because you're going to be going and trying to do a lot of burst damage. Now, normally I like to play with May Cause Imagery. They recently buffed this tactical, so you don't need to have Severing Slash anymore. So basically what this means, if I use Lacerate twice, this doesn't necessarily proc it correctly. If I was to go in here and use Voltaic Slash, it's now correctly procced, and whenever I use Discharge, it's going to AoE and do a big AoE around the main target. I don't have to rebuild these stacks again, but you know, as they're already there, I just had to use one Voltaic Slash, and we're good. Alternatively, you have flat damage increase to your shock, which is your ball lighting. Basically a massive damage increase, 17,000 is quite a bit. It's also damage over time, so it can do over 17,000, sometimes it can do less. The flat damage increase, I would really only recommend this if you're going for like sustained DPS. Otherwise, I find it just not really worthwhile. This one's also really nice if you're just going for like single target build and going for really high hits with Blade of Elements. Unfortunately, I don't actually like playing with that one, so I just don't even bother with it anymore. Especially since they nerfed the talent for it really early on. You have second one, but 2 cloaks. This is what I used to use, but now that we have May Cause Injury actually like being functionally a tactical compared to what it used to be, I find May Cause Injury a lot more fun. Whenever I'm playing like arenas, I will go 2 cloaks. I find 2 cloaks to be better. However, this is just what I prefer. And in AV, it's AoE Discharge really allows Exception to become a team fighter. So going into our talents, we're running the cooldown reduction on Reaping Strike. I think this is pretty good because it allows you to have more effective abilities that do a lot of damage at any given time when you're actually hitting somebody. Alternatively, you can take other selections here. So for example, killing an enemy after 3 seconds, Reaping Strike resets cooldown, increases the critical hit chance by 40% for 6 seconds, which is kind of cool, but we don't really need the critical, so I don't really find this very useful, and the chances that it procs is not crazy. However, it can be very good. This is a decent one to probably play with when you're running the damage reduction talent right here. So having this with that one can end up being pretty good. So these other options are not terrible. So if you're ever running this one and you need extra critical hit chance, Reaper can be good if you're actually getting kills. Then you also have this one. This basically just increases the critical hit chance of Reaping Strike by 20% and armor penetration. This one's really good in arenas. So if you're just going for like killing somebody through whatever, just it's important for you to kill them. Having that is a lot more useful. However, in general use case, this one just gets the most use and is the most valuable. Now, this one you can use Maul Spike. So whenever you use Maul stealth, you can get basically a spike, which is second stun. In darkness, this still exists, but unfortunately, this is like the only version that isn't like griefing yourself when it comes to hatred. Hatred is definitely griefing itself. So this is really good as an opener. Then you also have Overload, which is very good. Overall, I prefer mobility. I find that to be more important, especially as a team fighter. I like the team fight. I don't really care about dueling anymore. When the game was more complicated and had more stuff going on, that's when I preferred to do that kind of stuff. But now I'm just at the point where I need engagement on all cylinders. So I need a lot going on to really feel immersed in this game nowadays. Now when it comes to 39, I choose the critical hit chance actually over the other two. Rarely do I ever run this one. This one is actually kind of fun to play. A very niche use, so 9 times out of 10 I would never recommend running this, but there is a use for it. And then you have this one. This is the one that I always run. I just run this one because screw it. I don't care about dying. If you want to kill me, kill me. Deception, especially when you're playing relatively well, you're not going to be the priority target most of the time. And if you are the priority target, having the damage reduction is really nice. So if people start hitting you, like, oh, this guy's really squishy, maybe we should start hitting him more. And then you switch to this one, immediately you're like way harder to kill. And you'll be way more valuable. So just to give you an example of like how powerful this is, and this is why I think this class is a little bit sleeper at the moment, is that when we actually start using this ability, right, our damage reduction goes up quite high, 34%. That's really high. But look at your internal and elemental damage reduction. No other class really gets that high of internal and elemental. There we go. At the same time. Even tanks struggle to get this high, and for the most part, this allows you to be very effective against Pyro PT, Lethality, Lightning, Madness, like all those dot specs that you usually give this class a hassle. This allows you to be more of a brawler, more of a team fighter, and able to deal with those classes pretty effectively, actually. It is a great addition to the game, and it definitely helps them a lot. And I think the balance between taking this one and taking that one is a decent trade. So normally we'll just go this one. I'll show you how this one works real quick. So when I'm using my stacks, our critical hit chance goes up. So basically I'm just running around with 60% crit chance at all times, which is pretty busted too in itself. And you can kind of see why I would run that over the other one. Again, I don't really care about dying, so, you know, screw it. I am greed. And when things get tough, I just usually swap classes because most of the time people will just counter to this class, and it's not really hard to counter a class that doesn't have any good defensives. Then going into our next one is the force regen. The main reason I run this is just because it allows you to be more spammy with your abilities, which is very important if you're trying to get your discharges out as fast as you can. Generally, you have the ability to get an extra critical of your white damage, but my white damage is not actually doing that much damage because I'm building around discharge instead, so I find Lightning Engine a little bit more useful. But if I was to run 2 cloaks, I would find Lightning Critical a lot more useful. And then there's obviously, you know, Overcharge Saber. It does have value, and it does have a decent amount of value in Arena 2. And again, we're just running around, focusing on getting resets with our Shadowcraft, so having our Force Cloak up more often means more damage in general, rather than having the CC immunity, because honestly, most of the time I just don't find the value in CC immunity. Most people don't even bother CCing me during my deflection sometimes, so I take that with a grain of salt. Sometimes you swap between those, but for the most part, I find Fade more useful, and then you have your standard talents here. I already explained in Hatred, but basically I find the value of Force Speed being reduced by 5 seconds way more important than Shroud of Madness. And Shroud of Madness is only needed if you're going to get hit by yellow damage after you self out. When you self out, you actually purge most things that are already on you, except for Sticky Dart, so there's really not much of a need for it anymore. Let me swap my keybinds real quick to Assassin. Now we are set. So what we'll do here, an opener. If you're playing May Cause Injury, this is kind of like what you want to do. So we'll get 2 stacks here. And we'll open Stride, Voltec Slash, Discharge, Recklessness, Voltec Slash, Discharge. And then we'll go into Ball Lightning, Ball, Moving Strike. Basically what we're doing is working on proccing our Discharge yet again. Get our Discharge out, so on and so forth. Constantly just building Discharge. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Every time before you use a discharge, you want to make sure you at least use this ability or this ability. Make sure it hits somebody. Other than that, that's kind of like how you play May Cause Injury. You're just kind of going through your filler rotation. So Ball Lightning, number 1 priority, does the most damage. Reaping Strike, 2nd priority, does decent damage. Then 3rd priority, Maul, when it's procced, does decent damage. Ball Lightning again. Voltec Slash is your main filler. Basically, don't use Discharge unless it's glowing. so on and so forth. That's just kind of like how that goes. And then when it comes to playing Deception, if you move away from your target about 5 meters, see how that goes. With that travel time, you can close the gap in that travel time and get an ability off before the CC registers. So like even, let's just say I throw my stat and I maul, even though it's kind of like delayed there, the CC effect doesn't go into effect immediately. So that means that you can get a free ability off on them before the CC actually goes into effect, meaning effectively you can get 2 CCs off, 2 abilities off before the CC is over, versus just like doing it like this and only getting 1. Don't do that. Especially with force speed available, you can actually go a little bit further, get more travel time, and then, obviously close the gap and ability. Before, we used to have Phantom Stride on the, basically off the global cooldown, so you could do a low slash into Phantom Stride immediately and use an ability. And that made it way easier to do that, so now there's some finesse into that once again. Outside that, there's not much to think about. Let's say if we're playing with Blade of the Elements instead, kind of gonna be focused around. We could go this one, but having the Lightning Engine just makes it a little bit easier for spamming stuff, especially since how force hungry this ability is. You could kind of like do it this way. Just let me build my stacks real quick. So we had a 99k, that's not too bad. And obviously you would use your recklessness too, but kind of just looking at the numbers rather than like what I'm doing. Huh. It's crazy that this ability actually just still just slaps, like regardless. Very fun to play, by the way. If you guys haven't tried the elements with Reaping Strike build, very much so fun. I'd prefer main cause injury, but that's kind of like it for Deception. If you guys have any questions, again, even for the previous ones too, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will be more than happy to get to them. Let's go ahead and check what's the next class. Here, Deception. So it'll be Carnage, Fury, Annihilation, Marksmanship, and Concealment. We're at 1 hour and 36 minutes. Good Lord, it's gonna be like 4 hour, 3 hour something. Anyway, let's get to the next class. Alright, so we're back again. Now I have a very specific guide on this class, and I highly recommend checking that one out, as it'll go into way more depth and way more importance on the gear and the stats that I'll be running. So for example, we are trying to hit the 15.41%. This is high alacrity. This means I'll have 1.3 GCD. The reason why I hit this is because it has alacrity passive, and then during the Zen, it brings it down to like 1.1. This means that my GCs are going off incredibly fast, and I find that a lot more fun to play it that way. I've enjoyed it that way for a very long time, and not playing that way is just not fun for me. So high alacrity is not something I would recommend to everybody, but if you have the gear to do it, it's incredibly fun. If you have the APM and ability to take advantage of it, it's really fun to play on this class. However, for most players, you're really only looking at running 2 alacrity enhancements. You do not need anything more than that, so you can put any extra stats into critical. This passes critical hit chance PR is about 5100. However, you don't need that much if you don't want to. Having at least 5% accuracy is 100% worthwhile, but because my stats are kind of like screwed at the moment, we're not running that. And sometimes accuracy is maybe not even worth running, because if there's no tanks, there's not really a need to. Also, at the same time, you use Force Camouflage to get rid of the tank debuff that applies to your accuracy. Other than that, if I was to fix my stats a little bit more, these would be gold, so these would be 2 alacrity. This would put me at like 4100, which is a little bit more than what I want in total, but that's okay. I don't feel like fine-tuning my stats too much in this hypothetical. We would swap these 3 mastery for critical, and we would also swap these 2 for critical. It'll give me a lot more critical than I currently have. It would probably push me almost to 4,000, which is pretty good. Maybe like 4,000, which would be kind of funny. And one difference that I forgot to do is that instead of running the power relic, we would be running the critical relic. So let me grab that real quick. main reason I recommend the critical relic is because our critical is so low at the moment. Where we have 2 power here. Where's the critical one at? There it is. Basically, we'd be running this, so whatever. I'm gonna mess with the AUG here. This is kind of like what we would be having, but obviously we have more critical in this situation, and when we get the critical buff, be a lot better. Pretty much only run Shadow Mortis. Even with this tactical nerfed, this tactical completely breaks the game. And what I mean by that is it creates a situation where you're at 100% critical for a majority of your abilities. That's incredibly busted. I don't really feel like going too far into it, but imagine if you have 100% crit. You're probably going to be doing pretty well sustained damage wise. Putting everything is very, very powerful. So we pretty much always run the Fearless Victor because it gives you 10% increased damage to your bite damage. You're pretty much always doing that. It's only for melee damage, of course, but still it's your bite damage. And then you also have a auto crit. After you use Dual Saber Throw, you're able to get an auto crit for Dispatch. This is very vital to make this burst window actually really nasty, and it's definitely something worthwhile having because the Shadow Mortis critical hit chance also stacks with the 100% crit rate of Dispatcher. Now with that out of the way, main thing that you want to be looking at for this class is really if you ever want to swap the implant here. Second Wind is the alternative that's actually worth using. Other than that, pretty much always use Shadow Mortis. It's not worth taking it off. It completely breaks the spec too, by the way. I do think that it shouldn't exist, but until they actually make this class relevant, I'm going to hold my breath. So I use Driving Lance because this is extra mobility. Also allows you to do things like, let's say, there's a sniper perching up here and crouch, and you're stuck down here and you really want to get up there. All you have to do is use your Driving Gore. Like if you're high enough, like normally you'd probably standing down there, you're probably not within range to actually Driving Gore, but say sniper's like here. This is like more of like a drop from like an arena. So, not arena, but like a realistic AV8. You can just use Driving Lance and you can immediately get behind him. So that's like an extra gap closer and also works through crouch. So that's the main reason I use that. However, the other ones are not terrible. This one can be really good when there's a chance to just do and you can tie this with the which one is it here? You can tie it with this one right here. So basically your cooldowns are coming off cooldown all the time with this one, and then you'll also be able to just use this one all the time. It's a really funny build. I don't like it personally because you're like not really making use of Shadow Mortis to like its fullest. But it can be pretty fun to try and have fun with. However, other than that, this one is the other one that you'll be using. This one will allow you to spam Lance, and Lance is a gore. And what a gore is basically it's a hindrance, so it basically makes it so they can't use their escape abilities or their powerful defensives. And on top of that, it increases the critical hit chance by 10%, which is pretty good, but you also have the fact that when you're not taking Driving Gore, you actually get the Sunder effect from Zen. Or not Zen, but Lance. Because normally Lance will actually Sunder, but in the Driving Lance version, it does not Sunder at all. Which is unfortunate. I really do think that's probably just a bug, but who knows. Then you pretty much have to take Predation. These other two are not worth it. There are some cases where you can actually get away with using this as Carnage only. It's very fun to play with. For the most part, you're pretty much always running Predation. It's just too powerful. And then for this one, you don't really bother with any of these other ones. Even the damage reduction one's not really worthwhile because of the critical hit chance of Blade Rush is able to hit almost 100% with this talent right here, and then also getting a Valorant Call, which is this ability basically gives you a free Zen. Having cooldown reduction for this means that you can have your setup more often, and having your setup more often means lower cooldowns, which means faster abilities, and so on and so forth. It's a damage increase. And then we're getting into this one. This is the most important. This is the bread and butter. This is why your critical hit chance hits 100% on most of your abilities. Or I guess goes further beyond 100% because it definitely does. Basically, you get movement speed, and then you also get critical hit chance. And then whenever you would be hitting over 100% crit, especially with Blade Rush, that basically just turns into roll damage. Then I run Double Leap. The main reason why I run Double Leap is because we have cooldown reduction. It's basically pretty high because the alacrity is really high, and then during the Zen it's even higher, so we get like 10-second leaps, which is pretty good. Then you also run the internal and elemental damage reduction, which is pretty nice, and you would also get AoE damage reduction whenever you use Inspiration, Rebuke, or Transcendence, which is like your main 3 abilities that you use outside of Inspiration. That's your raid buff. So getting into damage reduction, this is like what you're looking at, right? When you pop Rebuke, damage reduction is not terrible. However, it's not like super amazing. I do feel like Rebuke should be a little bit better than what it currently is, but I'm not here to talk about how this class is overpruned, although I've mentioned it many times over the course of this. But that's kind of like how that's going. Even if you were to take this talent, which I feel like this talent should not be a talent, it should just exist as baseline as part of the spec, you still don't get incredible value. Like during Rebuke with this, would you get like pretty good damage reduction? Anyway, moving on. With this extra 3%, you would only hit 17%, which for internal and elemental damage, it's nowhere near what Sin can potentially actually reach, and you would be giving up 2 talent points to actually your mobility and up your damage to not even come close to Assassin's like durability option, which is kind of backwards if you ask me, but it's a completely different story. And then we have Zealous Ward, mostly because Trailblazer is just not worth it, and this thing should not even exist. The only reason it even exists is for PvPers, and like Pigeon holding a PvPer and actually taking it. Otherwise, it just really shouldn't exist. Then you have Mad Dash and Undying Rage. Those are the main 2 that you would actually choose. You would only run choke in like rare situations like in arenas where you're not being targeted and you don't need to have those. And you rather have the stun to help secure and kill, but even then, really I would just recommend Undying for new players and Mad Dash once you get a little bit more experienced. And then I would also recommend this one because this is a 1% heal every single time you use a rage ability, so this actually adds up after a while, or you can get the damage reduction. If you're getting healed a lot, Stoic will just be more helpful. However, if you're not getting healed a lot, playing most of the DPS games, this is definitely 100% worthwhile. So with pretty much all of that explained, let's go into like a rotational example real quick. This is going to get... I keep hitting the equal sign on accident when I'm trying to hit my regen button, which is like backspace. Sorry. This is going to get a little complicated. I'm not going to be able to really tell you the abilities because they're just going to be going off so fast, but maybe slow this down. For the most part, I'm pretty sure I messed up there because I completely blinked. It's been a while since I played this, but for the most part, what you're looking at is to, in your opener, get Dual Saber Throw off first. Because Dual Saber Throw, when I pop that, it gives me an auto crit for my dispatch. It's called Dispatcher's Challenge. That's the icon for it. And then I'll say that 3 stacks of Blade Rush will give you pretty much 100% crit for any of your next abilities. So you're kind of like going 1, 2, 3 with this ability all the time. Whenever you're looking to build rage, you go 1, 2, and then like Zealous or Saber Throw, or go 1 and then Saber Blade Ravage. That will always help you build some rage because it will be more expensive to use Blade Rush each time you use it. So if you ever need to have more rage, which will take a little bit for you to get used to, remember 1 stacking with Blade Ravage will give you a net positive in rage. And then 2 stacking with Zealous or 2 stacking with Saber Throw is the way to go. So just to do a quick rundown of that again. It's a little bit different. So normally you'd pop your second, what do you call it, Zen there, which you would get from Valor's Call. So you press Precision, and then you would dispatch into Dosing Blast, or Flashing Blast into Giant Lance, which is by the way on the Sentinel version of Carnage. So let's just do this one more time since we have Valor's Call again. I'm going to pop Zen, throw that, do this, I'm going to go ahead and re-up that. The reason why you usually want to go for dispatch first when you're going for your burst window is because dispatch will actually build rage. The other two will spend it. So if you're already low on rage, always understand that dispatch needs to go first, and you can build some range away from your target when you're doing that. You're going for delayed burst, for example, on a target. So I'll just showcase it real quick. Building distance like that allows you to kind of get these abilities to stack, especially if you have Berserk up. You get all these abilities kind of like hit at the same time, which is very nice, very smooth, and players tend not to react as fast. Anyway, that's Carnage, my favorite classes in the entire game. This is the main reason right here that I stayed in the game for as long as I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed this class. Unfortunately, at some point out they decided to give us a middle finger, which is unfortunate. I really don't like their direction of the game with the pruning, but I do have hope that they can fix this class because they added some really cool stuff to this class. Like Shadow Mortis, I think is absolutely cool. I think this is really cool with these two. It's awesome. But give some love to my class, please. Defensively, we are not it. This is a hard class to play because defensively it's paper. You're all about finesse. You're all about getting in and out and trying to do damage. But the problem is when it comes to tank and heal games, that's just not going to work. If somebody wants to just tell you, they can, and it will definitely shut down your damage a lot. Especially with things like Saber Throw Obfuscate existing, which is called Throwing Arm. That's for Juggernaut only. You can really be shut down. Saber Throw Obfuscate was a version of Marauders and Sentinels, by the way. Used to go right here. Used to be called Obfuscate or Pacify. That used to be an ability that we used to have. It got turned into a tactical 6.0 while Marauder still had it, and then removed from Marauder in 7.0. Unfortunate, but if you are interested in playing this class, feel free to leave me any questions. I'll be more than happy to help. I am jaded about this class, so forgive me about my opinions, but this class used to be amazing. Now it's not terrible, but any other version of this is awful. So let's go on and move to the next class, which will be Fury. So I won't really even swap to Marauder since it's going to be Fury Annihilation. I'm just going to switch to the other specs, and I'll catch you guys in just a second. Alright, now we are on Fury. This is the Republic version. Forgive me for I have a lot to say about this class and spec in general, so this section is going to be pretty long. This tactical was made for Concentration and Fury. However, it works way better on Rage Juggernaut, so this is an option. However, I don't really recommend it. The risk area is the solid choice to pretty much always go with, but overall on offense, it's not a terrible choice. It's really just if you don't have any tacticals already, because who's really going to dedicate to playing Fury when it's not doing so hot? Overall on offense is totally just a fine tactical that you can run. And then Gritif is also a decent one for defensive power. If you already have this, I mean, you know, you might as well save the tech frags and not even bother a tactical for the class. Or I guess the spec. This one can be actually pretty good because the tacticals don't really bring that much value. This one will bring some damage. This one will bring some damage. You know, the other one will bring some damage. It's like okay damage, not terrible damage. But sometimes a survival is more so the issue, and having Gritif a little bit more and having Saber Ward up a little bit more. It's just going to be a little bit more useful. However, it's the raw damage. Cutter is Cornerius might go to. It's the one that I usually use. Going into our stats, we're running the normal 4850 and then Galactic Threshold. We are also running the Berserker's Call and Fearless Victor. There are alternatives to Berserker's Call. You can use the Dispatcher if you wanted to, but for the most part, I find this one to be just a little bit more useful. And then on top of that, you can also replace this with Second Wind. Second Wind is actually very, very good on Fury, and I would highly recommend it over Berserker's Call most of the time. But I'm very greedy for damage, so we're running this one. Other than that, we're going into our damage. So I've already explained it in my guides multiple times, but let's just say it again to, wrap it out of the bag. This ability, this talent, right? It's your Raging Burst, or as would be Focus Burst as Sentinel, has doubled the AoE radius. And I'm not joking, maybe it's not even double, maybe it's just 3 more meters on Sentinel than it does Rage. Or not Rage, but Fury. So if you are playing Sentinel, you want to take this one. It's very good. However, 9 times out of 10, you would find a more purpose in Zenith because it's giving you more damage on all of your abilities in general. However, sometimes whenever I'm playing this, I'm not playing it to take it very seriously. This used to be one of my most played classes next to Carnage. Very much so enjoy this one. It flows well, it feels good to play. Defensively, it feels terrible now, so I don't really enjoy it, and its damage has been nerfed into the ground, and I mean literally into the ground, so I just don't really even play it anymore. But usually when I do, I like using this one because, again, on Sentinel, it's double the radius, and it's pretty cool, and it looks really cool. But alternatively, Zenith is just going to be better. It's going to do more damage. I highly recommend running that one instead, which we will in this situation. And try that one. It's really fun. I highly recommend it if you're playing this class. Definitely try it. Only if you're Sentinel, though. If you're a Marauder, you're not going to like it. And then these options just aren't anywhere near as good as the Rage Juggernaut versions, and this one's still not even as good as the Rage Jug one. But we take it because all these options just kind of suck for us. And then this one, we just take this one because it's honestly just the better option out of all these. We don't need extra Rage. Force Clarity / Fierce Power has just been buggy for us forever, so we don't even bother using that, and it's just not very good in general. So we pretty much always take Criticality. And then to our next option. This is another bug with this class. So if you already have 2 stacks of charge and you swap off of it, you still maintain your 2 stacks. Until you actually use those, you still have 2 stacks. So when I finally use this, I will only have 1 stack and it won't go to 2. And in a Warzone situation, you're probably only using this once. You're probably only getting 2 stacks once, or if you die and if you do a long run back, you might have 2 stacks again. For the most part, there's really no reason other than to have it pre-selected and then swap when you're in a Warzone. So then you can have the 2 stacks initially and then actually have the CC immunity, which is what I recommend for most players. Take the CC immunity, you want it. I don't understand why they took the CC immunity away and made it a talent when they made it free for Carnage. When Carnage previously didn't have the CC immunity, I honestly think all CC immunity should exist for all 3 of them, and it also should just be free. It's really stupid that they did it that way. And anyway, moving on. Saber Ward. Main reason we run this again is just because these talents suck. Undying Rage is really good too. Choke, again, really only for arenas, and I ran Inspired Focus more often than not because the value that you get out of this is a little bit more than the 2% damage reduction, but in any situation where you're actually being healed, Stoic again is better. So, over this twice now, so it's pretty much all the info that I can really give about those. Give you a rotational example, and do bear in mind it's been quite a while since I've actually played some Fury. I didn't bother to like refresh myself at all on this. I mean, honestly, I just simply just don't care anymore. We're gonna leap this into this. Normally you want to use your obliterate more often, but we are quite literally just going into the opener. This is kind of like how the class plays, and unfortunately the damage is not like terrible, but it's just not great, if that makes sense. It's more of a sustain spec than anything. Is my main complaint with it. But obviously that's not how you would do it if you're running average quest, which is sometimes something I like to run. And there are other ways to do the rotation. But for example, what I just did there is probably the easiest, most straightforward, infinitely looping rotation that you could possibly do. But general ideal is that whenever you have a Zen, right? Zen, whenever you pop it, will give you a destruction proc. So if I pop this, you see this pop right here. This is called Cone. However, on Imperial side, it'll be destruction. This basically means increased damage to your raging burst. So when you pop a leap, you get a free thing for this. So whenever I do this, it's going to do a lot of damage. And after I've used that, I'm going to get Zenith. So that's going to be more damage when I use my Fierce Strike and so on and so forth. And since this class is centered around sustain, the way it works now, or I guess has always worked, is that you're going to be using your priority damaging abilities first. So something like this, realistically. This is ideally what you would actually want to do, but not all the time is it that straightforward. Kind of like get the idea as you go when you're using your abilities. You get CDR for your other abilities. Honestly, don't recommend playing this class or spec, but you are. I actually do have a guide on this one too. I do recommend checking that out. Other than that, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm not going to spend too much time on this spec because I am quite jaded about it. The spec used to be very strong for a magnitude of reasons, mostly because of there was a tactical called Defel Splice Genes. It made it like really busted, and then you also had two different variants of this this talent right here. At one point it gave you an autocritical. At one point it also gave this one an autocritical, and then they just realized that, hey, it's the autocritical that's really making it busted. Let's just remove that, and that was a big loss for everybody. The main reason why, when it was tied to this one, it was more balanced, but it gave an autocritical, meant that you weren't also getting the critical hit chance. So you were just getting a more straightforward rotation, and you didn't have to use Seal Strike in PvP, which is really cool. But the problem is that this stuff right here, right? This is a vital part of your rotation, and keeping track of it, because that allows you to use your Berserk, which will give you a destruction proc, which is Cone on Sentinel. So let's just get max stacks real quick. So when we pop this ability right here, it's called Zen, we get this little icon here. And if I click that off, I can immediately start building centering stacks once again and get my Berserk or Zen back once again. When it came to parsing on a dummy, players were able to click that off pretty consistently because you're parsing, you're not moving, you're just following a static rotation. Clicking that off would allow you to do the same loop over and over indefinitely, and it was very, very high DPS. However, clicking that off in PvP or PvE was just highly ineffective and almost impossible to actually efficiently do, so you just didn't find the use for it. But they nerfed it. They removed it flat out because of that, I'm pretty sure, and the class is kind of suffering because of that. I really wish that they would revert it, because it would make this class, once again, pretty useful. Other than that, you know, all it brings to the table is damage, and it being paper defensively doesn't really bring anything right now, and this is the sustained version, or supposedly the sustained version, even though Carnage is better. It's in shambles. That's all I really have to say. Anyway, let's go to the next one, which will be Annihilation. We're going to do that one on this class too, so it's going to be Watchman. Alright, getting into Watchman. Despite all the bad things I have to say about my favorite class in the game and my main class, just in general. Annihilation, even though the statical is highly reliant on uptime, I actually enjoy the way it flows in Watchman. It actually feels very fun. However, it's just not doing too well, and this main reason for that is that the class has been pruned a little too hard. We had Undying Rage baseline, it would make it so much better. We had Choke and like a talent slot that could actually afford it. Predation should be baseline, Undying Rage should be baseline. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and skip over that because it just makes me sad to see it in the way that it is. These are our stats, pretty much generic. We run Dispatcher and Fearless. You can swap Dispatcher for Berserker's Call. There's definitely a reason to actually do that. However, we're just going to run this one for the display. And normal mastery power. By the way, we only use this one on high alacrity Carnage. And then Spiteful Saber. We don't really find any other tacticals useful because this one counts for so much of your overall damage that it's a massive damage loss to not use it. Anyway, getting into our talents, we are running the normal talents up here. And then let's start from the beginning. So Force Melt immediately maxes out your Geo stacks and generates centering. Basically, you have stacking of your Geo, which is your form, which will increase your damage. Having that is quite nice. And then it also builds 10 centering, which is basically 10 of this. This is very important. So having your sit up more often. Take Predation, that's an obvious choice. Then we're running this one because these other options aren't amazing. So for example, if you're PvPing and you actually want to kill people a little bit more often, having the cauterizing focus, which is basically trauma. This is actually really good. You're able to basically maintain this forever. So if you want to be really annoying and make sure somebody dies, this is a great choice to actually use. Then this one is just really weird. It's not terrible, but it replaces Cauterize. So if you're ever not using Spiteful Saber, this is the ability that you actually want to use. Since you're running or should be running Spiteful Saber, you're probably not going to be running that one ever. And then you have options here. I run this one because being able to build centering during Zen is very important and allows you to get your Zen up more often. This one is just not very good, so this one's really honestly the best one. Burst Clarity again has the same issues, and then we've talked about the other ones here. So let's go ahead and show you kind of like an example. This is the most sustained spec possible. There's not any other class that describes sustained in this class, or as the spec. But sustained is not the highest. Carnage is probably the king of that, along with Deception and Hatred. However, Deception is a little bit more RNG. This is a little less RNG. So let's go ahead and go into it. So really what you're going to be doing is you can open with Dispatch, or not Dispatch, but Dual Saber Throw. We might as well, just in this example, immediately get Cauterize off, pop our Zen into our Force Melt. And in this situation, you're looking to get a slash before you reuse your Twin Saber Throw because we're running the tactical that allows us to auto crit our slash. So that's really the only thing you have to think about on this class is that if you want to auto crit for your slash, you're going to have to make sure that you're kind of making use of your resets for your Dual Saber Throw, or Twin Saber Throw in this case. And this is it. There's not really much else to this class. That's quite literally it. It's too complicated. So when this is not glowing, you're going to be able to get a reset for it. As you saw, I just got another reset for it, and let's make another auto crit slash. That's where you kind of can get some sort of like skill expression going with this class, but or not class again. Spec is what I mean. But other than that, I really think that's probably where the auto crit for Annihilate should be. I think 100% Saber Throw or Twin Saber Throw should give you an auto crit for your Annihilate, which is Merciless Slash. Then actually learning how to use the unproc version and then the proc version, like kind of like back to get a little burst damage going. That's very much so worthwhile. Then pairing that with like this at the same time also adds a little bit more skill ceiling to the class. I think that would just be really good. Unfortunately, I don't see them doing that. This class does a lot of HPS RS spec again. I keep calling it class. I'm so sorry. we are 2 hours into talking nonstop, so there are going to be some mistakes. The amount of HPS that you do is really nice, and then team HPS is also pretty nice. Other than that, you're pretty much just an elemental. Not elemental. Is it even elemental? I think it's like internal. Either way, it's one or the other, and you're kind of just like a class that sits there and massages people, if that makes sense. So a lot of your damage is coming from your slash, and each time you slash, you get a reproc for your cauterize. Rinse, repeat. As you can see, it's like, I'm really only pressing one button. If you want to talk about an easy class to play, this is it. Especially if you're interested in PvE, which hopefully anybody that's a big PvEer, hopefully you're not watching this video still. But if you are, this is the class to play. Least amount of thought process required. Anyway, that is Annihilation. Back in the day, Ravage used to do a lot of damage. Channeled. Rupture was more respectable. It did pretty good damage. Force Melt / Force Rend didn't exist. Things like Force Scream was still useful. It's still kind of useful right now, but it's not as useful as it used to be back then. And Annihilate actually hit like a truck, and so did Dispatch, but it's no longer a thing. So let's go ahead and let's see what the next class is. I dwell on this for much longer. So we are almost done, which is pretty cool. We're at a little over 3 hours. Marksmanship and Concealment. So I'm going to have to go on my Gunslinger to show you Marksmanship, and then we'll go to Concealment. Alright, and we're back. This is Marksmanship, or Sharpshooter. So we are playing Republic. These are my stats. I would fix my critical. About 4450 is where I really want my critical to be. However, I highly recommend having accuracy, so much so to the point that even scuffing your critical a little bit is 100% worthwhile. Realizing that I'm missing my augments on my main hand offhand, so let's fix that real quick while we're talking about things. That one, then my other hand. Interesting. Alright. Let's go ahead and grab that. So there's 3 different tacticals that you can run. Agitating Energies is the one that I highly recommend because it allows you to do a lot more damage for sustained damage. And again, yeah, this class is not doing great in PvE. It's not parsing very high, and sustained damage is maybe not the way to build. But unfortunately, you don't really have any other ways to do damage, and your burst is just not very good. If you wanted to focus on your burst, you'd be looking at BO0, whichever it is, a differential. This will basically make your ambush, which would be aim shot, do more damage after your roll, or use your hideout ability, which is your hollow locate. And then there's refraction point, which basically makes your penetrating rounds at AoE. And then you can also take a talent to make it roots. It is, I would say overall really good right here for AoE. However, in most arenas you'll probably be running this one. And overall, I think Agitating Energies is just overall damage increase the most. And a little bit more versatile, and then refraction point and the instant cast ambush. There's definitely reasons to run it. So for example, let's say we do this, pop our dot. That is pretty bad. We actually couldn't see what I actually hit there because the offhand damage stacked on top of it. That was well over 100,000. That was a 138,000. That's pretty good. That would be your burst. You don't really have any other burst, unfortunately. So when you're running this, like if we're going to assault, kind of just looking at putting battle shot for the extra damage and insta cast that, and then put up penetrating rounds, trick shot, penetrating rounds. That's pretty much your burst window. You don't really have anything else available to you. So for example, there I hit like 142k, I think, which is pretty good. I do know that I am pretty much min-maxed. Right there, I hit 135,000 with my aim shot, and penetrating rounds were hitting about 22,000 on average, so that's not too bad. Trick shots were hitting 46,000, and for the most part, all that damage I just did was only 428,000, which is just barely a full health bar, and that's assuming that they're not using any defensives. It's not very good, to be honest with you. So I don't really like building around that at all. That's just not what I like. So again, that's the suffering and damage output. Other than that, it does have really good AoE. That's mostly just because this is massive right here. Going into our talents, we have the critical hit damage of aim shot. That's why I take that. The other ones I don't really care about. You can take the AoE splash damage and slow, but honestly, it's not really worth it. There's actually a bug with this, so if you kill somebody or you get killed with splash damage or whatever, you're basically affected by this and you get killed. This 30% slow will actually apply while you're in respawn zone. It's very annoying. Then this one is a sustained DPS, kind of like talent that you would take. So if you're able to channel a lot, I highly recommend this one because this one will allow you to basically get a little bit more damage out and be a little bit more positive with your energy. However, I take this one just to have a little bit more burst damage. I don't find myself channeling too much. I take the increased damage and cost of penetrating rounds because this is already an ability that you do a lot of damage with. And I take the restores energy to try to stay a little bit more net positive with my energy. Illegal mods, sometimes I find use of it, but for the most part, I don't really feel that it's worth it too much. And then this one, I also just don't find any value in this one right here. So I already have 2 stacks. I feel like I have a hard time in general just using them. There will be times I'll be sitting on 0. For the most part, ambush is not where the majority of your damage is coming from on this spec anymore, unless you're able to actually just sit there and free cast. And in those situations, it doesn't really matter because you're already destroying the enemy team. And then this one's also really good too, the roots. So whenever you're using refraction point, which is a really fun tactical, by the way. Inventories. Your inventory. Very good. Well, if you had refraction points, having the AoE finishing rounds with this, being able to mobilize them during the channel is just crazy. Very powerful. The armor penetration is really good. And hitting a guarded target and having a tank right next to it getting hit by that will absolutely shred a tank. It's very funny, but please don't do that to me. And don't do that to other people. It's like, out of all things you could do, please don't do that. But I would say it's pretty effective at doing that. It's like the one thing that's pretty good at. And then these are the general sniper things. Like pretty much everything that went for Virulence and engineering is pretty much the same here. So this is good against range. That you just want to have more uptime on your entrench. You pretty much take this one. Cover heal is pretty much mandatory. However, your scheme can be pretty good if you're actually getting healed consistently. However, cover heal brings a lot of HPS to the game. Locate is really good, and the team, it's more of like a team defensive, but also it's really good for you too. And then again, just having immunity to roots and slows while you have entrench up is really nice because it allows you to reposition a little bit more aggressively. And if you want to play objectives, having this talent is almost a must. Then this one can also be very good too, but for the most part, you're usually going with this one. Other than that, obviously on sniper, your loadout will look a little bit different. So again, if any of these classes, when I'm playing on the Republic side, you're confused as what the Imperial version of it is, just feel free to ask. Then when it goes to agitating energies, basically what happens here is if I put my dot on my target, every single time I use penetrating rounds, it refreshes the dot tick, and that's a lot of damage. So you're actually getting just a lot of damage from your vital shot here. Kind of the best way to think of playing Marksman is that every time your trick shot is available, you're pretty much using that. And it's like 2 snipes trick shot, and then you can do ambush trick shot. should be like a quick draw on Republic Salt or Imperial. Is it quick draw? It's follow through. There we go. Okay. So as you see, my Vital Shot is still on there, and I still haven't used it in a long time. So this tactical right here is basically just refreshing and taking the dot damage over and over. So it's just basically a lot of additional damage for already doing your normal sustain rotation, which is, you know, in this case it's trick shot. But follow through, it'd be like snipe, follow through, penetrating rounds, follow through. Reset it with burst volley, penetrating rounds, follow through. Then, like, if you have already sniped previously, you'll have a aim shot proc. You can pop Smuggler's Luck. It's aim shot, which is haze or laze to ambush and follow through. Let's repeat. 2 snipes to give more damage for ambush or reduced channel time, I think it is. And for the most part, it's not that complicated. When you're looking for AoE damage, right there. You don't really have to think about anything else. Just use that ability. If you're having energy problems, throw in an auto attack. Use that ability. Auto attack. Probably the easiest class to do AoE damage with, and it's one of the easier classes to actually just do damage on in general. Especially if you're running agitating energies. Right here, you can quite literally just do this. You have guaranteed a lot of damage for virtually 4 button presses. Other than that, that's pretty much it for Marksman. It's not a hard class to play. Defensively, it's a little bit harder, and kiting wise, it's a little bit harder. But for the most part, when it comes to damage, it's pretty straightforward. Pretty easy, in my opinion. Other than that, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I am going to move on to the next class because we don't want to spend too much longer. Otherwise, we're going to have a 4-hour video. So what's our next class here? Concealment. All right. Perfect. All right. We're back with the final class. Take a little bit longer with this class because there are some complicated things to kind of explain. That's not too complicated, but there's some things that you can do to make it a little bit better. These are the stats that I'm running. This is like the normal stats that I'll run across most of my characters. We are running the non-critical relic again. We only run that on the high alacrity build. Other than that, our stats are pretty much min-maxed, and we pretty much always run Volatile Strike. We don't really deviate from this because the other options are bad. Running Stimulated because it increases our damage by quite a lot more than the 10% crit hit chance, though sometimes the crit hit chance can outperform. The issue is that this one also is kind of like an uptime thing. So for the most part, like when you are engaging, you virtually always have this going, but in the rare cases that say we're already sitting on tactical advantages and we have to roll away and play defensively, heal myself, having the crit hit chance fall off as you're going into a volatile Shiv, even though Shiv would re-give it back to you. I guess maybe in that situation, like even if you get the Shiv, maybe it actually does apply for the volatile there. Either way, Stimulated and Tacticians is more so tied. Personally, I just don't care for it because our critical is already going to be really high, but not high enough to hit into the point where we're getting a lot of value damage-wise for it, I think. So I run Stimulated. However, this one is very good too. And if you were to swap out any of your tacticals or as implants, it would be Stimulated for Second Wind. Second Wind is very good on this class. Very good for the spec. Lethality doesn't really need it because its healing is just way too good. But other than that, like this one and Stimulated, pretty much tied, I guess, now that I think about it. And when it comes to Second Wind for survival. Alright, that's the first thing that we should cover. Back in the day, this class had dodge, and I'm pretty sure they briefly removed it, and they recently added it back. Where it is. This right here, 2% dodge chance. So just existing, you have a 2% chance to dodge anything. Doesn't matter what it is, you just dodge it. Used to be a thing a long time ago. Pretty sure they had removed it for a while and now it's back, which is super weird. I don't know how to explain that. It kind of like it kind of like changes things. Obviously it works as just like an extra 2% to your base defense chance, but I'm pretty sure it works for heal damage too at the same time, which is not obviously explained here. It's almost impossible to get that heal defense chance up at all, so it's kind of cool for this class. But unfortunately, you previously had stim boost with revitalizers. That's basically 20% damage reduction and percent health healing for the duration. That's no longer a thing for concealment. It had revitalizers, and especially with the talent, this one right here, I had this one and revitalizers together. This list of words would be so long. Like, I kid you not, it would be so long. I do feel like revitalizers should probably just be baseline, like how they did with power load. But regardless, this would be a really long one, and I think it would be really good. I think Concealment would actually be meta DPS. Once again, it would actually be incredibly strong like it was last expansion. If they were to have revitalizers and this at the same time, but they probably don't need it. This could actually probably even be nerfed and it would still probably be fine. Regardless, really the class didn't get pruned too hard. I can still take the hardstone. I'm not taking the hardstone right now because I like the movement speed on my evasion. And you're really just losing flashbang, AoE stealth, or all traverse. That's the main things that you're losing. So for the most part, this class barely got a slap on the wrist. However, they decided to take some defensive power away from it. And I don't think that was the proper move at all. This class definitely suffers. It's a 4-meter range ability, or class that's like centered around that. So when you're not able to be up in the fray and your main defensive is this, you're going to struggle, especially if you're a new player. So one thing to think about is that you have combo, volatile, shiv, backstab. Let's check your main combo. You can put crippling slice if you take this talent that I like to take into part of like your burst rotation. So you can do crippling slice. You can do volatile, crippling slice to shiv. Or you can do crippling slice, volatile to shiv. They all work the same way because this is delayed and doesn't go off until you hit shiv. But then you can also change it up to volatile, shiv, crippling slice, into backstab. So you can use it on your backstab, so your backstab hits really hard. Just give me an example of that real quick. We just hit a 150k casually. It's kind of nice, not gonna lie. The burst on this damage, the burst on this class is pretty good. The only reason why it's not ranked as high as like AP, engineering, and stuff like that when it comes to burst is that it takes a little bit more setup, and this class is very easy to shut down. When it comes to like raw number output, this class is probably comparable to Carnage and combat, like sustained damage. But when it comes to burst, it's probably more in line with something like AP, because it's able to hit that hard. It won't have the double backstab because I'm not taking the taking this talent, but you wouldn't be able to hit 150k without this talent right here. So it's a little bit worse than AP, but it's very good, like in damage, if it can actually stay on target. But the problem is it can't. AP has 15-meter range on most of its abilities. This class is only 4 meters. Much harder to play, and let's just go ahead and go into our talents here. Finish up this. So lacerates, critical hit chance is increased by 10%. Great. We already have crazy amount of critical from our passives to the point that critical is, it's a useful stat, but this is one of the classes that can kind of get away without having too much critical if you don't have a lot of stats yet. Then also you get to reduce cooldown on your stim boost by 10 seconds each time you use lacerate. That's huge. So that means you're having stim boost all the time, which means that you can make use of this talent right here all the time. You can run your hard stun, or you can run quick countermeasures. You don't really even need this. This is almost never worthwhile. And you already have the ability. This is just increasing the damage on it. This ability is not really used, so you don't really need that. The main reason you would even use it is to do like an AoE stop on people camping. So when it comes to this, it's hard stun or movement speed and reduce cooldown and your evasion. I like this one. Then when it comes to this, you can take the range version of Crippling Throw. I think it's amazing. It's definitely worth using. This one's more for dueling. So if you're into like dueling a little bit more, this is definitely a decent one to take. And then when it comes to this one's just for big hits. So if you like the big hits, this is the one to go. It also makes it a little bit harder to play. So do keep that in mind. Highly recommend learning with Crippling Throw. Highly recommend taking Tactical Critical because this increases your damage just tenfold. It's very strong. Not taking this talent, you lose out on a lot of damage. This one is interesting, but honestly, even the description gives it too much. It gives it just too much nonsense. I think the wording of this is just convoluted. That would be the word. However, it does give you some very important information. For the most part, I just don't recommend this because it's just not going to get the full effect because the combat system doesn't work the way that this is intended to work, as you could say. People will pretty much pull you out of combat, or pull you out into combat. You try to make use of this. So the damage that you will actually get out of this window is not amazing. So I'll just give you an example of this. So basically what happens when you build a TA, which is tactical advantage, you have active stealth. So in this window, you're basically like a mini stealth for a second there. Pretty much every situation there, it's just not worth it. Even theoretically with the damage increase, it's just like a worse version of Shadowcraft, but it's a little bit more defensively oriented. And it's up to you, honestly. If you really want to take it, you can. I think it's a waste of time. It's a new bait, convoluted choice. And then you have this one. This one is pretty good, but unfortunately, without having revitalizers, it's not worth taking, honestly. Then we take our flat damage reduction. We're taking the evasive screen because on this class, I am a little bit more interested in actually getting a combat reset. So if people are trying to pull me back in combat, I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. However, most of the time I will take this one, but you don't really get as much value as you usually do on this one. So sometimes I'll be just spec'd into this just because, but this one can bring a lot more value most of the time. Then you have Hollow Traverse, Flashbang, pretty much always Hollow Traverse, but if you're playing off node a lot and you're looking for duels and you're trying to get a cap and whatnot, Flashbang will be a little bit more useful for you. Then we have the Evasion CDR. If you're going for dueling, I highly recommend Blow for Blow, but if you're not going for dueling and you're trying to be a little bit more of a nuisance, having Evasive Imperative is going to allow you to be a little bit more slippery. Now, to get into something pretty important for this class is roll extension. So basically how this works is if you're rolling like this, you get a little bit more distance. So we get about right here from rolling off there. Now there's different variants of roll extension, and sometimes bad with it, you're not going to get anywhere. So for example, you see I got slightly further. That's only because I got to the edge. Normally you don't want to get to the edge because what happens is like, okay, well, it's just not going to work on that one. Some of these will just basically have you roll just a little bit and then they'll have you fall immediately. Basically, you won't get a roll extension. So if we do something like, let's see how we went just as far. That's a roll extension. So anytime that your roll hits about midway, roughly, you're going to get more distance when you fall. So when we roll here, it just barely gets us there. So that means we want to stop about right here. So when we roll again, we're getting the maximum use of our roll. So we got further than what we did when we were standing on the ledge. So hopefully that makes sense. Roll extension is very important. There's a lot of different things that you can do. So for example, from the side, like on the side rolls of hotball, you can roll from one platform. Let's say you're on the middle. So like this is the ramp right here and you're going up in the main hotball, and then you've got the two separates, or There are two ways, parting ways, I guess. There's a fire trap here, a fire trap there. You get up here, so let's say up here now, and then the fire trap's like right here. You have the ability to roll through it, obviously, but also at the same time when you're over there on that platform, let's just say you're on the platform now, and then this is like the hot ball area, you can actually just roll from this platform to there. Obviously you can't do it here because it's not the equal distance, but you would be able to roll back to the floor. It's a little bit more complicated to try to explain in a video without actually being on that map. But there's a lot of rule extensions that you can do, and I highly recommend if you actually like this class and you want to one-trick it, definitely just sit there and try to learn all the rules of the extensions. Lethality is also the better class to sit here and learn this on, so definitely do that. Otherwise, have some fun. There's a lot of shortcuts in Warzones that you can actually use, and there's a lot of like niche things that you can do that a lot of people just don't do anymore. Anyway, going into like the basic kits. So what you're doing when you're going into burst on somebody, normally you probably want to stun them or root them in some sort of way. So for example, like we'll open up a root here, do our volatile to shiv, and then backstab. That's our main burst damage right there. Laceration is our filler. That's just kind of like how it goes for us. And then obviously we'll like roll and wait for our cooldowns to come back. But if you're just going for full on, say like try hard sustain damage, you'll be doing volatile, dart, shiv, crippling slice, backstab, lacerate, shiv, lacerate, hollow shivers, lacerate, shiv, stem boost, lacerate, so on and so forth. You kind of like get the ideal. Then obviously you can alternate between using your crippling on your backstab or your shiv. Then also dart. It's really good because it'll increase your damage, or not your damage, but your tactical advantage generation. But for the most part, that's kind of just how it goes. It's not really crazy. It does a lot of damage, and tactical advantage management is a little bit harder to do on the spec, and it really just depends on what you're trying to do. Most of the time, you don't need to be perfect with it, and chances are, if you're trying too hard to be perfect with it, you're probably going to die like instantly because you're not playing any bit of defensively. You have 2 probes that you can keep up all the time. This is about every 16 seconds you want to refresh that, so that's about every backstab, but give or take, you're not going to get every backstab off because it's kind of hard to do that. If you're able to keep your backstab on cooldown for the entire match, that would be quite the achievement. But you kind of get the general ideal, kind of like how it goes, and then a probe in between, go back in. Since this class is also kind of like assassin durability wise, it's a lot worse than assassin durability wise, but it has god roll. God roll during the duration of the roll, you can resist everything in the game. Now outside of that, you basically have no damage reduction at all. You're screwed. You're gonna die. There's a talent to get damage reduction, if I remember correctly. This one right here. This one can give you damage reduction. Sometimes it's worth taking if you really want to. So for example, we'll show you that real quick. But when it comes to surviving, you're definitely suffering a little bit. But the damage loss without taking that is not crazy, but it's also kind of worthwhile sometimes, the damage reduction that you gain. But you're going to have to play it a little bit smarter, since I'm not really paying attention to this, just trying to keep this up. You're going to have to like pay attention to your rotation so you can actually keep this going, and then on top of that, your damage is going to suffer because you're going to lose your tactical critical unless you're playing it perfectly and your uptime is really good, and you're not going to get stim boost as often. So do take that with a grain of salt. This can be very good. Sometimes it'll be insanely good, but for the most part your healing's not very good, so it really just is up to you. Personally, there's only a handful of times that I've used this, and every time I've used it, nobody hits me anyway. So It's funny how that works. If you're running damage reduction, people don't hit you. But if you're running pure glass cannon, suddenly people are just all hitting you. And then sometimes people won't hit you and you're running pure glass cannon. And that feels really nice. Other than that, that's pretty much all the classes in the game. This is our tier list again. And this is the tier list if everybody is really good at their class. Other than that, I know a lot of people will have some disagreements, but this is my tier list, so oh well. I hope you guys have a wonderful new year. I know that it was a couple of days ago, but yeah, wanted to do a video and I didn't know what kind of video I wanted to do, and kind of just winged this one, and it's quite long, as you can see. If you guys have any questions or anything else that you want to add, feel free to add them in the comments. I'll be more than happy to help you. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.